gambling goes, the house always wins. VDO features a ton of unique classes and continues to actively update the game, but how is the game's population trending as of late? Let's take a look at Google Trends here. If we look at the charts here, we can see that the game's launch was incredible and garnered a ton of interest. It bled players for a long time, as MMOs do, but its recent expansion saw a significant increase in interest in the game. This recent expansion focused on questing and bossing, two things the game never really focused on before, and it seems to be paying off in spades. If you tried VDO before and it was too grindy, it might be worth trying again for its Land of the Morning Light expansion. Continuing to hold down the third position is Old School RuneScape. Old School RuneScape launched in 2013 and continued to climb as if it is completely unaware that MMOs are supposed to become less popular with age. You can play this game on a computer, a phone, and probably a toaster. The system requirements are so low that this is probably the most accessible MMO out there, and I think it owes a lot of its success to this. On top of that, Old School RuneScape is a game run by the players, with each significant change voted on by the player base. Old School RuneScape launched as a result of the community not loving some of the changes that were made to the game. Retail RuneScape added WoW-like abilities and a cash shop that many accused of introducing pay-to-win to the game, and so the community begged the developers for the creation of Old School RuneScape. Jagex finally agreed and created servers that were based on the 2007 version of the game. RuneScape does not have the player follow a linear storyline, but instead has the player choose their own path through the game. Players can choose to kill monsters, go off questing, or level up one of their many different skills. Old School RuneScape is a make the numbers go up game. You skill up, you level up your crafting, your sword wielding, your fishing, anything you can think of.
Sword wielding.
And a lot of people enjoy doing this. RuneScape is a very sandboxy MMO that allows for a lot of AFK skilling, and thanks to its slow pace and incredibly low computer requirements, it's very accessible. It's got some pretty involved quests that would be near impossible to figure out with the help of add-ons and guides, but it's as old school as it gets, with a very clunky combat system and user interface. It will take some time and some patience to get used to it if you're going to try it for the first time in 2023. Old School RuneScape was even made available on Android and iOS, and was the most downloaded game in 8 different countries in less than 2 weeks, and I'd wager this is a big part of why it's so popular. Old School RuneScape has been so successful. No, it wasn't supposed to age like wine, getting bigger year after year for a lot of years. In the last year, it's held steady, not really growing or shrinking, as it prepares to announce its next major expansion. An insane accomplishment for an MMO that launched to such a degree of failure that it shut the game down and relaunched. Final Fantasy XIV continues to be a story that gives hope to rocky MMO launches today. You can fix an imperfect MMO if you're willing to listen to the feedback of your fans and put the work in. Final Fantasy XIV is a fantasy MMORPG that places a massive focus on the story. The single-player story content comes first, and every piece of the game that follows is built in service to that end. The dungeons are unlocked as part of the story, the trials are unlocked and woven into the story. Some of the most memorable cutscenes in the game are delivered in the middle of a trial while you're fighting for your life. Final Fantasy XIV is a master storyteller. It also features 20 different classes and the holy trinity of paid healer and DPS. Final Fantasy XIV has a free trial where you can play the game's first 60 levels for free. After that, you'll have to buy the game and pay the mandatory sub. Thanks to this mandatory sub, however, this game is free of pay to win. It's free of loot boxes, and it has hundreds of cosmetics and mounts that you can earn in-game by playing the game. It's going to be fascinating to watch and see what direction they go with the story in their next expansion, and just as importantly, how many people show up. Will it continue to be one of the only MMOs that experiences long-term growth? If we look at how Final Fantasy XIV is trending on Google, it's been battling WoW for the top spot. With the launch of Dragonflight, all of that changed. Which brings us to, not surprisingly, number 1 on the list, World of Warcraft. Continuing to hold down the top spot with a sizable gap between it and the next biggest MMO. The lead up to Dragonflight propelled it above Final Fantasy XIV, and it's held on to a lot of that interest. Public opinion in the game has largely recovered since the self-inflicted wound that was the Shadowlands expansion. On top of that, we should see Blizzard announce its next expansion at BlizzCon in November, which should be a huge boon for interest in the game. People have spent their entire lives playing World of Warcraft, with some players now clocking 18 years played. It's a testament to the massive appeal that this game was able to garner. World of Warcraft is a massive, seamless MMO that still handles scale better than almost any MMO I've played. You can see locations multiple zones away and get on your mount and then fly to them. This is something that a lot of MMOs created well after WoW are still unable to deliver on, thanks to them being broken into smaller zones. Despite its age, WoW still looks great, thanks to an art style that's aged incredibly well over the years and multiple engine overhauls. WoW features the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS, and has 13 unique classes, each with multiple different specs. There is a lot of single-player content for you to level and play your way through, as well as dungeons and raids. WoW's dungeons and raids are among some of the best out there, but be prepared to devote a good chunk of your time to them, as they are quite a bit longer than most MMOs, dungeons, and raids today. So what does interest in WoW look like according to Google Trends? You can see on this graph here how it absolutely dwarfs the competition in its prime. Looking at its popularity from 2004 to 2012, nothing else even comes close. And while WoW continues to fall in popularity, when we zoom in and look at the last 5 years, there is still a substantial gap between the interest in WoW and the interest in every other MMO we've discussed so far. This titan in the industry is still just that, a titan in the industry. And with the success of Dragonflight, it's kept its spot at number 1. In fact, WoW's rise wasn't overnight. It's also worth noting WoW's been on a bit of an upward trend for the last couple of years, but can it maintain its momentum this time? We'll check back in on it later in the year, but for now, it's number 1 and it's not even close. It's been an amazing couple of years for MMOs. We've seen multiple MMOs drop absolutely stunning expansions, like WoW's Dragonflight, Guild Wars 2's End of Dragons, Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker, ESO's Necrom, BDO's Land of the Morning Light, and New World's Brimstone Sands. There's also an amazing year ahead, as we have an incoming Guild Wars 2, New World, Final Fantasy XIV, ESO, and World of Warcraft expansion set to be delivered within the next 5 months. Did any of the results on this list surprise you? Let me know down in the comments below. Which MMOs do you think are going to move up or down when I update this list again in 2024? And what will the addition of Floating Liberty do on this list? Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to find out, as I'll continue to cover MMOs like the degenerate MMO player I am. As always, massive shout out and a massive thank you to my YouTube members. To become a YouTube member, click the join button below for access to my private Discord channel, behind the scenes footage, and more. Sincerely, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If you're not sure what to do next, swing by my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/luckyghost, or watch one of the videos popping up on screen right now.
let's see if I agree with myself from 3 years ago. I haven't watched this video in ages. My opinion has changed. My opinion has become more nuanced. My editing, I hope, has got better. My presentation in general has got better. Why modern MMOs suck. That's a very emotive title. Do modern MMOs suck? Are they bad, or was I just jumping on the hate bandwagon? Did I realize that most MMO players are jaded old veterans and just want to hate on everything? You know, think about the old days, that kind of stuff. Do they just hate it? Let's find out.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Scott and I love MMORPGs. I think they're one of the greatest gaming achievements of the last 20 years. And will continue to be a part of the gaming landscape for the rest of time.
My opinion there has not changed. I do still love MMORPGs. I think they're amazing and they will be a part of the gaming landscape until the end of time. But have they changed? Have they? Some of you are sitting there thinking, Josh, you paused the video 14 seconds in. It's a 22-minute video. We're going to be here a while. Look, all right? I need to make sure that there is absolutely no reason that you can watch this reaction over the original to make sure that we actually replace the original in the algorithm. It simply enhances the original. That means we are going to go deep. Okay? Not like that. Clips over. There you go, Visa. There's your lunch. MMOs years ago was just EverQuest and Albion and Ultima Online, and then it was, you know, when things happen, now it's just Genshin Impact and that kind of stuff. Director's commentary version. Pretty much, this is the director's commentary. First of all, I have not changed the font that I use in 3 years. And for anyone really concerned, anyone who wants some deep Josh Stewart lore, that font is called Sword Art Online, okay? It just is. I'm sorry. I actually had a series where I reviewed and critiqued Sword Art Online based on how good it would be as an actual MMO. And the answer is, it wouldn't be terrible, but there's a lot of UI issues. And that entire series got copyright claimed by Sony Japan. That's why you can't watch that anymore. Just so you know, there we go. Some deep lore for you. Let's keep going.
The ability to exist within and explore a consistent virtual world with millions of other people is a monumental achievement. And now we have more MMORPGs than ever.
For some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to include footage rather than other internet assets. Just don't like it.
Ranging from classical fantasy to interstellar sci-fi. Servers for every part of the globe. Games.
Servers for every part of the globe, except Australia. You guys don't get servers for any game. Okay? You don't. Not enough people in Australia play MMOs. You're not allowed that. When a company is making an MMO, they're like, where should we put the servers? Europe? You gotta do. America? Yeah, they need some as well. What about Asia? Okay, cool. Asia will work. What about Australia? No. No, you don't deserve it. You guys have to play with lag.
Changed into multiple languages. With all this advancement, you'd assume MMORPGs are going from strength to strength, only improving. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Are MMOs only improving, or have they just set up some kind of hook that's going to bring people in? That, in the business term, we call a hook. Now, I know that it's 47 seconds into the original video. We've got 20 minutes left to go, and we're stopping a lot. Have, just general poll in the chat, have MMOs improved or not in the last, I mean, just 3 years ago. So let's say 3 years. People say no. All right, well, I didn't expect that. I thought most of you would be playing New World, you'd be playing the new Final Fantasy XIV expansion. I really thought more people would say yes to that. Have they improved? No, 61% of you were like, no, they've got worse. Everything's terrible. New World wasn't good on release, but it's kind of found a middle ground now. So, okay, cool. 61%.
Yeah, 20,000 pop.
I've played MMORPGs my entire life. I've adventured through RuneScape, EverQuest,
Oh, jeez.
Runes of Magic, Terra, Neverwinter, Guild Wars,
Rip Terror.
Warfare 2, Skyforge, and many more. I've seen years of advancements and gameplay changes from developers hyped and customers met with indifference.
Can we talk about hype and how it's just almost no one outside of the immediate circle of people who have created it cares? content, and if it's good, it will do well. That's what it is. If it's good, people will hype it up when they get to play.
If it's good, they'll do it.
Hype something up before it exists.
I've seen player bases rise to the incredible heights of millions of accounts and hundreds of thousands of active players, and fall to the pitiful maintenance mode every dying MMORPG must go through before being shut down for good. But how has this happened? How can a genre so worldwide rise to such heights and then fall so intensely from grace? What is ruining modern MMORPGs? Well, after almost 20 years of playing them, I think I've finally found the answer.
No one has more confidence than a late to mid-20s white guy. I had all the answers. All of them. Every single one. Tell you what, when I started my YouTube channel 5 years ago, I'm like, why don't people know things? I know things. I'm going to share the things I know with people. I'm going to put this world correct. Then I spent some time on the internet, and I learned some things. Then I realized how much I didn't know. I didn't even know how much I didn't know. And now people come up to me and they're like, Josh, what do you think? And I'm like, I think I'm a complete fucking idiot who is just about scraping by in this life, who may have some opinions that might or might not be wrong. Or right. I don't know.
That's how I feel too.
Play RuneScape, man.
Yep.
Let me explain.
You ever cringe at those tricky...
I am not paying for YouTube Premium. All right? I'm not doing it.
I started off by scouring Reddit.
You're very rich, but you don't want to pay for it,
Terrible
huh?
way to start a sentence.
YouTube made you.
Research by going to Reddit.
YouTube made you $10 million, but yet you don't pay for YouTube Premium. And this is what's wrong with the world. This particular misappropriation, I'd say. Spend money on coffee and nice mics and gaming chairs and stuff, instead of the YouTube that brought you where you are.
Oh, dude. No. Oh, it's just what terrible foundation to begin from. And now I hate everything.
And asking my friends or Discord chat what they remembered loving about MMORPGs, what their favourite memories were, those never-to-be-forgotten adventures they'd warmly reminisce about. And even though I received hundreds of different stories, they all had several core themes. Let's take some examples and see if you can work it out. These extracts are from other MMORPG fans reliving their favourite memories.
I genuinely enjoyed doing this bit of the video because I basically said, right, everyone thinks MMOs RPGs are getting worse. Why don't I go to people and be like, hey, what's your favorite memory? And everyone, when you ask them what they actually love about them, they've got so much stuff they love. But when you say, hey, tell me about MMOs, it's got negativity. Absolute loads and loads and loads of negativity.
2007 was peak RuneScape for me. Me and my mates used to hop in this Skype chat we had every night after school and all do our own thing. Some of us fished, some trained Slayer, and some just stood around trying to merchant and sell things. But every night before we logged off, we'd meet up and go kill a boss for an hour or two. It wasn't great money because there were so many of us the loot split was awful, but we had the best time together.
When was the last time you did something in an MMO that wasn't efficient? What was it? I mean, as silly as that sounds, I used to genuinely have this idea of, it was beautiful. I would get home from school, we had this Skype chat going for like 2 years, it never even closed. There were so many people in the Skype chat, it never hung up. It would get so laggy, but we would keep trying to do it. When was the last time you logged onto a game, did something, and you knew that it wasn't efficient? Because, as they said, the creator of SimCity once said, given enough opportunity, a player will optimize the fun out of a game. Have you ever sat
I
down
hate
to play a
that.
game
I won't
and
do
within
it.
About half an hour to an hour of playing it, if you're lucky, if you even get that far, you start to think, I should go on the wiki and work out the most efficient way to do this. Not the most fun way, not the most enjoyable way, the most efficient way. People seem to have this idea that when you sit down to play a game, if you do not make progress that either the game or the community as a whole recognize as progress, it has less value than you just playing the game for your own way. Have you ever been playing a game and made little progress and thought, wow, that was a waste of time? What a strange thing to think. What a strange thing to do, to sit down to enjoy your hobby and to do it in such a way that others may not see it as efficient, that the game may not see as efficient, that you may not progress through fast enough, and your first thought is, that was a waste of time. People seem to have
Not
this
me.
opinion.
I thought, oh, I have fun.
Nowadays.
Mission succeeded.
When playing a game, you must make progress, because playing a game without progressing is wasting time, but playing a game while progressing is not wasting time. And I think that might be because there are so many games available to us now that we want to play all of them. But we say to ourselves, hey, I'm not going to play that game until I've played this game. So playing the game you're playing now isn't just about slowing down and experiencing it, it's about completing it to get it out the way to allow something else to happen.
My guildies and I would stand around in the starting area and welcome any new account we saw being made, give them some basic items, and then follow them around for a while, making sure they were okay. Most of them would join our guild afterwards and loved how welcome we made them feel. We knew the tutorial was rubbish, so we had to...
How many of you, after playing a game for a hell of a long time, decided, you know what, the progress that I'm making is now too slow, and the bosses that I'm killing are now, their drops are too rare, or you just finished whatever you feel comfortable finishing, and your thought was, I'm going to go and help someone else. I'm going to go and have them, see them have the same love that I had. Have you ever fallen into that pit where when you try and help someone and they do something and you say to them, no, that's the wrong way, don't do it that way, do it this way instead, this way's more efficient? You can very much immediately optimize the fun out of someone else's experience. A lot of people helped me in Elder Scrolls Online. Some of you saying no, some saying yes. Have you ever wanted your friend to come and play an MMORPG with you, and as you were watching them struggle in the early game, instead of letting them go through the same struggles that you went through to develop the same love, you try to make sure they don't make any of the same mistakes or the same pitfalls? Ironically, preventing someone from making the same mistakes you made doesn't actually generate more love for the game. If anything, it just takes away an experience that they could have at one point have. I find it very strange. In MMOs, don't give new players
for the experience
a ton
foraging.
of items and money. And the reason that you shouldn't do this, in my personal opinion, is the vast amount of an MMO is the progression. It is the, I worked hard, I have been rewarded with this, which I can see makes my character better, faster, stronger. I can see my character has improved. My effort has been rewarded. If you just give people some of the highest level stuff or the best stuff in the game, they then ask themselves, hang on, why am I doing anything now? Why am I putting the effort in? Because the reward that I would get for putting the effort in, I have already got. Therefore, it's not
Routine and endurance,
it's the same
yeah.
thing. You don't always make people feel better about an MMO by giving them everything from the start. The grind is sometimes the enjoyable part. And that feeling of putting hours of effort into something to then be rewarded with a better weapon, a better bit of armor, a better item, that item has weight. That item feels super important because you've gone through the journey to get it. This is another video, but when you remove the journey that you have to go on to get something, then that something actually has less emotional value to you because it's not connected to anything. It's emotionally empty. Whereas if you have to go on a journey to get something, it's emotionally full. Who, in World of Warcraft, got the Lucid Nightmare? That thought that you had to go on an incredible across the kind of continent quest to get. I was able to get the Lucid Nightmare. One of my absolute best memories within World of Warcraft is getting the Lucid Nightmare. I think it was fantastic. Right, let's keep going.
I'd stand in the trading tunnel in EverQuest for hours, flipping items, buying low one side and selling high the other. You'd spot other people doing exactly the same thing and end up with an intense rivalry, always trying to type immediately after them so it pushed their chat up off the screen first.
Whoever had a rival in an MMORPG? And this only happens when a community can form and remain consistent. Because one of the things that don't get me wrong, I very much admire the fact that EverQuest has its mega server. I admire the fact that RuneScape lets you change homeworlds whenever you want to, so it's easier to group up with people. But that freedom does also come with a price. It comes with the price of removing a consistent community. When you you play an MMO and you see 5 people in a group or 10 people in a group, if you know that group can be formed of any combination of 5 from the entire game, you don't really feel a connection to any of those 5. I mean, how many of you have used Group Finder to run a dungeon or run a raid in any game, and then at the end of it, everyone's left, you didn't even remember people's names, you just mechanically went through a moment together, and then it's ephemeral. You'll never see them again, you'll never talk to them again. You might see them once or twice, but there's no connection there, there's no moment. It does take away that sense of community. And when people say to me that MMOs used to be about community, about playing together as a group, it was because you would see the same people repeatedly. I remember when I was young, when I was a teenager, we were playing RuneScape back when in like 2006 or something, and I was standing in the Clan Wars arena at RuneScape, and I just thought it'd be really cool to have an in-game rival. So I just typed in chat, looking for rival, and this guy called RuneXpel just replied saying, shut up, and I thought, perfect. I added him to my friends list, and for the next couple of years, we were rivals. Every time his clan was at Clan Wars, I would bring mine, we would fight. We would lose. We weren't as big. You know, we weren't as geared. But oh man, if someone said to me, hey Josh, RuneXpel's at the Willows, I'm like, guys, willow trees now, we're taking them. Didn't even need willow logs. He may have seen it as harassment. I saw it as guild rivalry. He messaged me a couple of years ago and be like, you still playing? I'm like, yeah. He's like, shut up. Fantastic. He's kept that rivalry going for years. I appreciate that. But yeah, when you take away, or should I say, not when you take away, but when you add in the ability to mix the communities as endlessly as you want to, you do remove that structure that builds up around having specific communities.
Back in Neverwinter, if you wanted to do a dungeon with a friend who wasn't the same level as you had to actually travel to that dungeon within the world. No group finder. So we'd load up on supplies in the main hub city of Protector's Enclave and ride all the way to wherever we decided to go to. Sometimes lower levels would aggro the mobs in the higher level maps, and we'd have to waste our supplies just trying to keep them alive. But damn, it was good fun.
So it was in Neverwinter, when Neverwinter did have a group finder, and if you were all max level, I think it was either 60 or 70 at the time, what would happen is if you had 5 level 70 players, you could jump in the group finder and it would teleport you directly to the dungeon entrance. But if you had someone in your party who was level 50 or level 60, they couldn't use the group finder, but they could still enter the dungeon. So what would have to happen is you would have to run that person all the way through the dangerous area. And I quite like this. It's another design I like about Runes of Magic. Runes of Magic did not prevent you from walking into a higher level dungeon. You stop doing it. You don't have some basic mob which track you. And if your level was way too low, your experience would actually be leveled down to prevent people from power-leveling you through it. But you could do it, and I admired that level of freedom. Yeah, someone in chat says escort quest. It was almost like a real-life escort quest to escort your low-level friend all the way to a high-level dungeon. I really admire that.
I remember trying to get into Runes of Magic years ago. The game had its issues, but the main problem was I couldn't find any advice online about how to do anything, or what certain enemies or attacks
One
did.
hit as a
So I spent
one
hours
hit.
figuring it out and writing stuff down. I ended up with a little notebook next to my PC to check on whenever I couldn't remember.
Stupid dick.
Actually taken handwritten notes about an MMORPG. And this used to happen in the Meridian 59 days, this happened in the Access days, this happened in the Ultima Online days, and what it would be is maps you could just Google Images were terrible at the time, and you might not know all the shortcuts and you might not know where to find all the
Ooh,
items.
great
So
axe.
people would actually draw stuff, people would draw it on graph paper, people would note down conversation trees, people would note down how items interacted, people would note down mixing potions, and then you would share this information normally with an internet radio chat or with a forum. And I'm showing my age now, guys. We used forums back in the day, they were cool. And then everything became centralized, and now everyone just uses either Wikipedia or Reddit. Information itself used to be at a premium. Knowing things and having access to maps, having access to enemy strategies, having access to numbers. I used to know people who, when playing Neverwinter, would every single patch work out the most efficient use of power points or ability points to make overpowered classes and then actually sell that information. They'd be like, hey, this is the best way to make a barbarian in patch whatever of Neverwinter. If you want to know where I've put all of my points, PayPal me £5 or something like that. People did that. And I thought, okay, this is actually making information a valuable commodity, because the sharing of information is not yet super easy for everyone. And once everyone is able to share the information super easily, then that knowledge is no longer rare and valuable and powerful and esoteric. It's now just, oh, everyone does that. People in the chat, I mean, World of Warcraft classes back in the day, special equipment, where to get it from. People would keep information to themselves or within their own guilds. You'd write it down. You'd have notebooks. I remember, I have a vivid memory. I used to play Morrowind as a kid, and I had a laptop, terrible old laggy laptop. I remember playing the Blood Moon expansion in Morrowind, which had snow graphics, and I would be playing it like a freaking PowerPoint. You know, it would be lagging and lagging and lagging. I'd see one frame every 2 seconds. But I had, remember the map that came with Morrowind? You know, the huge, big, cool, the map of Vardenfell. I had that blue tacked on the wall next to me. I actually almost developed a crick in my neck because I would be playing on my laptop, glancing at the map. Laptop, map, laptop, map. I memorized how to get through Vivek. I memorized how to get from any place to any other place because I was staring at that map. But to me, that physical media was super useful. And I would write down spells. I would write down combinations. I had notepads of this stuff because I wasn't smart enough at the time to just Google it. I didn't know that you could.
I ended up telling other players everything that I'd learned.
Yeah, but that makes you
hundreds of
strong,
stories
though.
like this from other players, but after reading them and trying to find the links, I realized something. There are 2 things MMORPGs did that made them great, and it's those 2 things that have been removed or reduced in a majority of modern games.
I genuinely cannot remember what those 2 things are, but what do we think they're going to be? The 2 things that obviously those stories had in common. The first one seems to be communication and community, and the second one seems to be playing inefficiently. That's what I would go for with this one. Doing something that's not specifically about progression and doing something that's about interaction with the community. That's where I'm going to go for with this one. I genuinely can't remember what I did.
1. They were not convenient. Convenience sounds like a good thing.
Didn't see that coming. Forgot about that. But can we extrapolate from that? They were not convenient. What's convenience in an MMO? Is it fast travel? Is it being able to have access to any information at any moment? Is it being able to look up anything? Is it being able to teleport exactly to the
Not fighting the clients every single day.
part of me as
The mod's actually working.
I wouldn't call myself a game designer, but I've looked into the design ethics of it enough, is players want convenience. But is it one of those things where players want something because it removes a challenge that they're facing? But when you remove the challenge that they're facing, those players quickly realize that overcoming the challenge was its own reward. It unfortunately is, you think you do, but you don't. If you have to, do step A, B, C, D, E to get reward X, and people say, hey, I just want reward X, remove step A. Okay, cool. Now it's just B, C, D, X. Okay, well that's pointless. Remove step B as well. Okay, cool. B was a bit annoying. We removed that as well. Well, let's remove step C. Okay, yeah, C was easier. We've made it more convenient to skip through C. Eventually, we'll get to a point where the reward actually has less value to players, both in-game monetary-wise and emotional and gameplay experience-wise, because the reward for what? What's it a reward for now? Is it a reward for just teleporting straight to the dungeon, using a guide to kill the boss and getting the drop 50 times an hour? Because previously it was a reward for doing something much more difficult. The easier you make access to a reward, you are diluting what that reward is.
And indeed, in many ways, it is a positive trait for something to have. But making something convenient isn't always an improvement. Let me give you an example to explain this. Imagine, at the top of a mountain, across a dangerous valley, hidden at the end of a raging river, only shown on a secret map held by a traveling trickster sits a wise old sage,
Oh.
knowing of many things. And this sage will share his knowledge with you. If you can find the trickster, take the map, sail the river, traverse the valley, climb the mountain, and ask him a question.
I think ironically we've literally just ended up with that example anyway, and this is an example I use for many people all the time. When you look at a lot of the legends of old, you realize that they were legends because the journey the main character goes on, or the
Yep.
journey the legend goes on,
Yep.
is a difficult one. And if you remove all of the challenges that person had to go on to achieve the reward or whatever they were trying to get, then suddenly the reward is worth far less and it's not as important anymore. Oh yeah, look, it steps A, B, C, and D. What are people like, oh, well, hey, I don't want to cross the river, I don't want to find someone else, I still want to meet the sage. Well, suddenly, meeting the sage is no longer epic. It's now easy. There's a perfect example someone showed in the show. You don't want the journey to the task. You just want to do the task itself. But is the journey to the task part of the task? Is the journey to get to the difficult part actually part of the challenge overall?
Many try, few succeed.
That's an interesting one. Many try, few succeed. The easier you make something, the more convenient you make something to do, the more people can do it. On one side, that's great. We want lots of people to experience your game. On another side, if the difficult part or the non-convenient part is the game, then removing this is changing the game experience. This is almost like the people who were asking for easy mode in Elden Ring. Elden Ring was designed to be a specific experience. This is the experience they want you to have. Now, I'm not saying that's a correct or wrong game decision. That was the game decision they made, and I respect the fact they stuck with it. And when people say, hey, can we have an easy mode for this? Would adding an easy mode change what Elden Ring fundamentally is? How much can you change it? Is this like a weird Ship of Theseus argument? Like, how much can you change an experience and replace it with other bits before it becomes a different experience from what was originally designed?
Over years and years, the legend of the sage grows and grows until everyone has heard of him, but few have ever seen him.
Everyone has heard of him, but few have ever seen him. That's a rarity argument. Look at World of Warcraft. Ashbringer, pretty badass sword, that Ashbringer. You know what would definitely kill the perceived legendary status? Would be if everyone had it. It's totally okay to design an item or a weapon or a piece of armor that everyone can get access to. That's okay. But also make it difficult. Because as soon as everyone gets one, suddenly the value of each individual one gets diluted. I'm sorry to quote The Incredibles, I think it was Syndrome that said, when everyone's super, no one is. It's difficult to create the idea of legendary rarity when it's actually not legendarily rare. If you want to create a myth around something, it must remain mythical. You can't use the coding of mythical when actually it's very common. It's difficult without a doubt, but you're using words that bring about these emotions and experiences that infer it's much rarer than it actually is.
If the same sage lived in the middle of a major city and there were tour groups taken to him every hour. The second example has exactly the same end point as the first, talking to the sage, but the journey to make it happen has been made much more convenient. Surely this is a good thing, right?
It's also been monetized, but that is definitely a different discussion for a different day. Here's a weird thing. Have you ever found it very difficult to take something seriously when it seems displaced from its original location? And here's what I mean by that. Imagine you did go on a mythical journey. Imagine you did go on this globe-trotting adventure, and at the top of a mountain there was someone stood stoically in flowing robes, their wind whipping their hair back, and they looked mystical. They looked magical. And the entire scenario that you've been on, the environment that you're in, the journey you've taken, the hardships you've undergone, that actually increases the kind of mythical appeal of this person, of this deity that you've gone to meet. But if you were to take the same deity and stick them in the middle of Birmingham and put them in the back of a pub somewhere and charge people £5 to go and see them, and they were just sat on a cheap IKEA sofa with a radio buzzing away in the background, suddenly, even though it's exactly the same person, you've changed the scenario that you meet them in, and it's less magical. It's less powerful, and this is where phenomenology comes in. My favorite word, my favorite bloody study. Everything about an experience is part of the experience itself as well, including the situation and the emotional state that you find yourself in as a contributor or a member of that situation. You need everything to work with you. And unfortunately, when you make things more convenient to get to, you don't just remove the magic of getting to them. You remove the magic of having the experience, which adds up and stacks up and almost exponentially increases the completion of the task itself.
Well, yes and no. It's good because it makes the end goal easier to achieve, and it's bad because the end goal of anything is not where the experience and the adventure and the mystery actually lies. It is the journey to the end goal, the seeking of the map, the sailing of the river, the crossing of the valley, and the climbing of the mountain. The difficulty present in achieving an audience with the sage was precisely what made the audience with him so damn impressive. It was the reward for the completion of a task, and reward is directly and inversely proportional to the difficulty of the task required for that reward.
Sometimes you do something really difficult and you get some kind of reward for it, and the thing you actually get has no monetary value at all. In many ways, it's just junk. But it's got emotional value attached to it, and it's almost got systemic value attached to it, because in order to get it, you must have done something. If someone does something really difficult and shows me a medal, or a trophy, or a bit of paper, they
Okay, one-shot me.
say,
I mean, it is 8 levels. It's 8 level difference, yeah. I can almost kill them, but
melted cheap copper.
I took an arrow to the knee.
With some ink printed on it. It is, you can buy this from the local trophy store and have them engrave whatever they want on it. Because the value of that thing is
There's a giant mushroom over
just
there.
the monetary value of the materials that's making it. It's the value of how you get the thing. When someone comes up to you and say, hey, here is an incredibly rare thing that only exists because we've only got a few of them, and we're giving them out to people who complete a difficult task. Okay, cool. Can I go on eBay and buy one of these? Yeah, you can, but it won't have the same connection to it. And I think what this is this connects to the idea of difficulty. When someone gets an item or a weapon or a piece of armor in a video game, especially an MMORPG, there is a journey that someone has gone on to get the weapon or to get that item. And when other people see you with it, they understand that it is not just a weapon or an item or a piece of armor, it's a representation of the completion of a journey. It is the symbol that you have undergone hardship and succeeded, and that has value. When you make these symbols available without the hardship, it loses its impressiveness, it loses its luster, it loses its power as a symbol, because now it doesn't represent the thing it used to represent, and symbols by themselves have no power at all. Symbols are simply representations of concepts, of things, or ideas. When you see someone with a symbol that represents something impressive, you are impressed. When you see someone with a symbol that has no idea behind it, no connection, then you don't know what to think. People do say, You're missing a big part of the equation, novelty. The journey isn't novel anymore, but the item is. That's a very interesting way of putting it. Kaz, so we are talking about the novelty. The journey isn't novel. That's very true. And I think a lot of people miss that because when you play your first MMORPG, the process of running to a dungeon is new to you. When you play your 30th MMORPG, the process of running to a dungeon is not new to you. But the dungeon is different in both games. The task, the difficulty, the experience. Is a process in one game being different to a process in another? Is that the main point? Because if you have, Journey A, run for half an hour, do something difficult, and then Journey B, run for half an hour, do something difficult but different. The only difference in these journeys is whatever you do for A and B. The running part is the same. That's not unique. When you have, this is going to be difficult. Okay, what's difficult about it? You've got to do the same thing you've done in the last 30 games. Okay, cool. That's not novel. Difficulty being novel is an interesting, important concept. But if it's someone's first game, it's novel to them. If it's someone's first game and they don't have that half an hour run to the dungeon, they won't have that memory. You might have that memory from whatever MMORPG you played before, and your
50 foraging.
The dungeon made you think, corpse runs. I loved those. Everyone that went on a corpse run in EverQuest loves them. You ask them if they want to do it now. No, they don't want to do it now. Because they actually remember that corpse runs take a hell of a long time without giving you a hell of a lot of gameplay. A lot of people seem to be incredibly nostalgic for the things that took a lot of time, and yet when you ask them to do those kind of things nowadays, they don't want to do it because they want to get to the gameplay. Of course, was that time taken to get to your corpse, was that gameplay? Was that part of the experience? Can you have an experience within an MMO that isn't necessarily gameplay? That's an interesting question.
Convenience makes achievements both easier to reach and meaningless to get. Every example I'd read out above lists a part of the game that was not convenient. The player drop splits not being personal, the in-game tutorial being useless, manual trading due to the lack of an auction house, being killed by mobs while traveling, or the lack of an up-to-date wiki.
Do you find that you have a lot of nostalgia for things that used to be difficult to do because you did them, but if presented with a situation where you are required to do something difficult, you don't want to do it now? You like the memory of having done it, but if you're like, hey, do you want to do it again? No. You have a memory of this? Yeah, I enjoy it. I remember these times when me and my friends, used to spend hours being inefficient. Okay, are you inefficient now? Because the memory is great. But when you say to people, why don't you do that again? Why don't you recreate that memory now and see how it feels now? Suddenly people realize, actually, I have a different mindset. Less time. I've grown up. I have a job. I have kids to learn. Not me personally, but other people who have MMORPG histories have different time commitments now. And while they remember having a great time being inefficient years ago, you ask them if they want to be inefficient now? No, they don't. It's very, very... It's almost sad that the fondest memories you have are the experiences that you want to have again. Because if you had them now, you wouldn't be able to enjoy them.
Convenience kills adventure. The easier you make something to achieve, the less impact and personal pride that achievement will carry.
Why didn't they just fly the eagles to Mordor? I mean, apart from the fact there are many actual reasons in the book, it would have been a crap story. There are moments when you have to look and go, because it makes a better story. That's fine. Not everything has to be absolutely 100% completely efficient. Sometimes it just makes a better story to do it that way. That's fine. You're okay doing that. Why didn't they just tunnel underground to Mordor? Could have worked. Absolutely could have worked. Just fast travel to Mordor. Yeah. In fact, as long as Gollum's been in there before and now Gollum's in your party, you unlock the fast travel location. Just pop over there, throw it in. Convenience changes adventure. Convenience changes experience. Who here in the chat has ever been camping? Because comedy is just tragedy plus time. That's what it is. A good memory is sometimes a shit time that you try and, relive later. And I don't mean terrible as in like actual traumatic and hurt. If you've ever been camping, who's ever been absolutely rained out of their tent? Who is absolutely chucked it down, your pack's muddy, your shoes aren't fitting right. You can't take your boots off when you go camping. So if you take your boots off, your feet swell up, and then when you try and put them back on, it hurts like hell and starts rubbing. And then after you've walked for an hour or two, your feet have shrunk slightly, your boots are flopping all over the place. It's not a good place. Who has had a, not bad, but a challenging, difficult experience with their friends, with themselves at the time, and then you look back on it now and go, oh man, that was a crazy adventure. You almost smile when you say about it. Oh, that was difficult. This happens a lot in military-style boot camps, and that is why a lot of kind of band of brothers attitude exists, where you look back on the difficult times that you survived together and think, oh man, wow, that was difficult. We got through it together, though. Yeah? It wasn't funny at the time. It wasn't even fun at the time. But you look back on it and you're like, oh man, they were the days. You might have hated high school, but then you get together with the one person that you got on really well with. You look back and you're like, oh yeah, we had some laughs at that. That is a difficult thing to do. There have been days when I needed to get the bus somewhere. I got the bus somewhere. I ran out of cash. I had no money in my pocket, and I'm thinking, right, the next walk home is 3 hours across muddy fields, and you freaking hate it at the time. You're like, this is awful. I just want someone to pick me up and take me home. But then like a couple of weeks later, you're like, you know what? That trek across the field is actually character building, soul searching. I like that. You've very much got to find this level. It exists between easy and life-changingly traumatic. This level of it's not convenient, it's not even fun, it's challenging, but it's rewarding after you've done it. It makes you a better person for having the memory of having done it. The test of your own mettle. And games had that. And some games still do. But not all of them, because they take it away because people don't like it. It's a very, very difficult one to kind of quantify, to measure. But adversity absolutely builds character, without a doubt. But you need to find the level of adversity that you can struggle through. Comfort is the enemy of ambition, as they say. You can come up against a level of adversity, take it on, succeed, and become a better person for having succeeded. Imagine if you had a choice. You had to climb a mountain, but there's two ways you can do it. You can either hop in the car and have someone drive you up there, or take a week and actually climb that mountain. One of them is way more convenient, but that ignores the fact that it's not about the convenience. It's about
Seven Forging, nice.
Think about this in your own life. I'm sure you've done something in your life the hard way. The way others told you, don't do that, do this instead, it's easier. And you weren't quite able to explain to them, it's not about it being convenient, it's about being an achievement.
Does anyone else on YouTube watch the channel Business Insider? Because they have a really interesting playlist called, I think it's either Still Standing or How Expensive. Still Standing is a really interesting one because it takes you through old handmade crafts and watching how artisans still make them. A lot of the Eastern episodes are fantastic, like, handmade katanas, handmade, amazing teapots, handmade this, handmade that. And I'm looking at them thinking, you know what? It really would be a hell of a lot more convenient if you could just have machines that do all this for you. But there is, and this is very important, there is a value to doing something slowly. There is a value to doing something in a difficult way because it is the process itself which imbues the final product with the spirit of the process that it went through. it's very hard to... Soul is, I suppose, the best way to put it. It actually is soul. Low down, I can't believe in an actual Josh live stream. Now you're going to be in an actual Josh video. Congratulations, you've made it. Yeah, there's a beauty, a luxury about creating something through the process. And I'll give you an example in my own life. This is nowhere near as impressive as anything else, but when I make thumbnails for my YouTube videos, I don't have any presets. Even though I use exactly the same font, exactly the same text, and exactly the same style every single time, I do not have any presets that I use. I will manually load up, I use GIMP because it's a really good image manipulation program, and I will find a screenshot, I will screenshot it with Gyazo, I'll save that screenshot, I'll paste that screenshot in, I'll resize it exactly, I'll add in some text, I'll resize the text, even though I resize it to exactly the same size every single time, and then I will add in a little white border, I'll cut something out manually. You know when, if you look at any of my thumbnails, they've always got like an image on the right hand side, like a character or an item, and it's been cut out. I don't use any kind of stuff to do that. I use the lasso tool, and I go around and trace every single thing that I cut out. It's super inefficient, but to me, that is part of the artisanal process of actually making a video. Someone said to me before, you could save so much time if you just automated this. And I said, it's not about saving me the time of this part. This is part of my therapeutic process to do it. This has value to me. I take handwritten notes for every single video by hand. Every single page, handwritten notes. I have an absolute cup of empty pens in another room, because when I look at that cup of empty pens, that to me means, look, you've done this much work. But to me, the process of making these videos is not just about pumping out quantity. It's about giving it the quality that I feel comfortable with.
That's point one. In point two, they facilitated and rewarded player interaction.
Facilitated is just a fancy word for saying they allowed you to do this. It is a facility for a thing. What we're talking about, in case anyone's forgotten in the 1 hour we've been watching an 8-minute video, is we're talking about the things that old MMOs did better than new MMOs. And I asked Manuel, but this is a video of mine, and this is a 3-year-old video. And I want to watch and see if I agree with 3-year-old me. By that I mean me from 3 years ago, not just stick me as a baby on the side. Tell me your opinions on MMORPGs. And then like tiny little vested baby me would be like, well Josh, I believe that actually what you're looking for, because that's how I spoke when I was 3, it's true. Do I agree with me 3 years ago? Okay, point 1 was they made it too convenient and killed the adventure. Point 2, they facilitated and rewarded player interactions. So old MMOs, actually, this sounds silly, but old MMOs were not good games. They were good systems that you could interact with as a group. That's what it was. If you play an old MMO solo, you're going to have a bad time. You are. You jump on original Ultima, you jump on original EverQuest, which you can still play, and you try and play them completely on your own, good luck. But you grab a couple of friends, you grab a couple of guildies, you have some people with you, like I had in this footage that we're watching right now, and I only got this because I was streaming at the time. Then people were like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's jump on. Now, World of Warcraft kind of bucked that trend, because World of Warcraft was one of the first MMOs that you could actually legitimately play quite okay solo. Remember that when it first came out, World of Warcraft in 2004 was considered casual. These games like EverQuest, like Dark Age
No,
of
it
Camelot,
wasn't.
Ultima Online, look at World of Warcraft and go, oh, it's baby's first MMO. Oh, it's
No.
casual land. Oh,
No, in
people
2012 it was
easy.
considered casual, but
You need a team
not in
of
2004,
so
not at all.
easy. And then it turned out
WoW
that
was the
people
most
didn't,
hardcore.
because they wanted to be able to play a game by themselves, and then every other MMO from then on went, right, we've got to make solo modes possible. And every game that came out that said, hey, we're going to make this so it's got to be old school and difficult, they didn't succeed as well. I see so many new MMOs being made, especially on Kickstarter. Kickstarter MMOs really need to take a step back and look at themselves, especially when they say, hey, we're going to make this like games used to be. Okay? What games? Ultima and EverQuest. Yeah, those games are still going. Like, who are you taking over from this? Why are you doing this? Are you making it inconvenient on purpose? Yes. Okay, cool. You're going to get a very niche community. It exists, but my god, it's niche. I'm just waiting for the 100% science-based Dragons MMO. That's going to be the one that kills World of Warcraft. That's going to be the WoW killer. The science-based.
Oh my god, they killed me.
This may be a more complex point,
Yeah.
so let me explain, and bear with me. MMORPGs are
Fucking
I do
annoying.
remember this video. I can't believe.
Oh,
Literally,
you put me back to town,
just
huh?
said the same thing.
Oh, well.
Me from 3 years ago still had it.
not good games in the traditional sense. Now, before you get angry, hear me out. If I bought a single-player game for full price and it contained 1,000 identical fetch quests, I'd feel cheated. I'd think the devs were lazy and using cut and paste for everything. So why do I allow this in MMORPGs? Well, it's because, first and foremost, MMORPGs aren't really games in the traditional sense. They are multiplayer experience facilitators.
That's a very big sentence and makes me sound very clever. But ultimately it means that when the developers sat down, they weren't saying, hey, let's make the best RPG we can. They were saying, let's make the best multiplayer experience. This is why, whenever people ask me to describe World of Warcraft versus Final Fantasy XIV, I try and tell people that Final Fantasy XIV is an RPG that you can play online. Whereas a game like EverQuest is an online experience with friends and a chatbot that you can also go and kill enemies. It very much depends on almost where you sit on the spectrum of design. Is it... Because the spectrum of design, if you want purely multiplayer experiences, would probably be Fall Guys. There you go. Just 100 people going on a track. That's the most multiplayer experience you can have. Everyone's there. 100-player Tetris. Remember that? It existed for a while. Just game experiences that purely rely on player interaction. There's no game there. If you took away the players, you would have nothing to do. That is the most multiplayer game you can possibly have. Without the players, it doesn't exist. And then you have an RPG game. Doesn't matter if you don't have multiple players. With one player, it is still an RPG. That'd be your Baldur's Gates. MMOs have to find a way to sit in the middle. They need to be a good RPG experience by themselves. But they also need to push the multiplayer element, otherwise there is no reason to team up with people. And I think what we've seen recently in most MMORPG design is when people are designing a hardcore MMO, they tend to skew closer to the you need people to survive, it's not good without them element. Whereas when people are making a more casual MMORPG or an online RPG experience with friends, then they tend to skew more toward the side of it's a good RPG by itself and you can get your friends involved. And the kind of games you like exist somewhere on this spectrum.
This is simply a fancy way of saying they give multiple players the ability and the tools they need to interact with other players if they want to. Want to chat to someone? You can. Duel them, trade them, add them as a friend, all fine. Meet up with a huge group and go destroy a boss enemy together? Go for it. MMORPGs give you the ability to share an adventure with other people. And here's the important part. They rewarded you if you did. Grouping up is often faster experience. Boss monsters require a team to kill. In-game professions cannot all be mastered by one person, so a team is needed to gather rare materials if you need to craft things.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. That idea of they rewarded you for playing together. MMORPGs used to reward you for playing together. And slowly but surely, I think what's happened is that reward, that encouragement of playing together has been removed.
Oops.
Who played RuneScape? Who did the Heroes Quest? Or I think it was one of the quests that required one of you to be in the Phoenix gang and one of you to be in the Black Arm gang? That quest in RuneScape 3, the Shield of Arav quest, thank you. That quest in RuneScape 3 no longer needs you to team up with someone. You can now do that solo. You still have to team up in RuneScape Old School, but
Oh, thanks.
no longer in RuneScape 3. They removed
Level 4 and
the
armor
requirement
patching,
to team up.
first aid, simple
Now,
armor
one of
patch,
the
first
reasons they
aid
did
kit.
this was because doing that quest actually required that neither of you had done the quest. And it required almost a constant influx of new players to be able to do. The way it was originally set up, it was a constant influx of players. And there's a way to get around it now. There were ways to get around it back then, but mostly it required an influx of players. Without that influx of players, they realized that they just pretty much couldn't do
A week?
that anymore.
Why
So,
a
right, we need
week?
to make this possible just for, solo players. It needs to be possible solo. But is that a good thing? Because RuneScape was set up to allow people to team up, and then it removed the ability. What about an MMORPG that actually punishes you if you do team up? Now that sounds really dumb, but if you could kill a boss with 2 or 3 people, and then a 4th or 5th person asked to join you, and it wouldn't make the kill any faster, but it would split the loot between more people, is that a good or a bad thing to do? Do you want to put an MMORPG player into the position where they have to ask themselves, is it worth taking this person? Is it worth giving this new person an experience within the game that we have that actually would make it worse for us? Mining in old school RuneScape used to be competitive, as in you couldn't have the same ore from the same rock that someone else had. Mining in RuneScape 3 is now an individual experience, and I'm pretty sure you can actually get bonuses if you do it with more people. Enemies can get stronger if you team up with people. Do you want to put players into a position where teaming up is a negative? Because there's 2 sides to this coin. If you put players into a position where having people with them makes the game objectively worse for them, they're not going to do it, and you have to facilitate solo play. But if you allow a player to master every single crafting system in the game and craft every single item, then they never have to make a choice. And if you want to have both the best sword and the best shield, you no longer need to find someone who is a master sword crafter and then a master shield maker. You can just become both these things yourself. You are an army of one person, effectively. Does removing reliance on a community change the experience of an MMORPG?
Now, however, many players are going through the game solo. While this isn't a bad thing by itself, I've personally enjoyed a few hours solo in Guild Wars 2. It does mean you're removing the multiplayer aspect of the game and focusing on the gameplay part, which was never, ever the main focus of the developers. A single-player game like The Witcher 3 or Deus Ex can focus on personal story, character interaction, world choices, and make you feel important. But the strength of an MMORPG, the single defining factor of that genre that makes it stand head and shoulders above other games, is other players. So developers will always place the majority of resources into making the multiplayer experience as great as possible.
How many of you have found an MMORPG on Steam, on Kickstarter, maybe it's dead, maybe it's in maintenance mode, and you've logged in to play it, and your first thought was, this would be really good if there were more people. This would be enjoyable if I had people to play with. And as soon as you feel that, have you ever thought, you know what, it's not worth carrying on my own. It's not worth being here because I know, I've got that feeling that no matter how good I get at this game, I will never be able to either complete it or experience all of it simply because I don't have somebody else with me. And that can be a lonely feeling because when you contact your friends and say, hey, I found this new MMO, it's probably going to be cool, but there's no players in it right now and I need your help. They are not going to want to join you because how many people would willingly join a dying MMO? Have you ever been told by your friends to join something and they've been like, nah, mate, that game's going to die. That game's dead. I don't want to invest my time in a dying MMO. That's another really weird kind of thought process that people have, but I get it. I understand it. When I was playing old school RuneScape, when it was just RuneScape years ago, before the evolution of combat happened, when the evolution of combat happened, when the game changed around so much, I said to my friends, look guys, we've got to push on from RuneScape, we've got to move, we've got to go somewhere else, we've got to find a new home for a bit. I recommend Terra. And all my other friends went, Josh, we're going to go and play World of Warcraft. And I went, foolish fools, because Terra is going to be the winner in this battle of games. You mark my words, friends from many years ago. Terra, the action combat game, will be the king.
Nope.
And it's not often I make mistakes. You know, it happens, don't get me wrong, but that was a mistake. The problem is, now, how many people could I legitimately convince to come and play an MMO with me if that MMO is going to die? I could probably convince quite a few people because I make MMORPG content. But if I didn't, if I was just a guy playing MMOs, I'm like, hey guys, come and play this game with me. It's dead, but it would be fun if there were 4 of us. They're going to go, no. No, I want to play a good MMO that's going to survive. Because survival of the community is vital. Because, and the wording here is very important, people say they don't want to invest their time in a bad game. Invest.
Wait.
Who here in the chat sees their time playing a video game as an investment of your time? Not just an enjoyment thing that you do, not just a hobby, but an investment. Because when you look back on the time that you've spent playing it, you don't...
Wait, I fixed it. I think I fixed it.
What is the difference between a bad investment of time and a good investment of time?
I think I fixed it. I think I fixed my problem. No way. Oh, no, wait, no. Oops, we're display
when you come back to the game in the future,
unlock.
The time that you've put into it in the past is still relevant? Or is a good investment the time that you had at the moment, you know, when it was happening, was still enjoyable and fun? Because if it only matters that the game
I did
survives,
fix a part of it.
Investment is actually more important to you in the future. You're not even worrying if you enjoy the time at the moment. You're not even thinking, oh my God, I want to make sure I'm having a good time right now. You're saying to yourself, I want to make sure the time I spend right now is still relevant in a few years' time. And that's a dangerous place to be. Who here has played an MMO which has died and you can't play anymore, but you still consider your time playing it time well spent? Has anyone ever played an MMO, the MMO has died, and your first thought was been, well, that's a waste of time. That was pointless. Why did I spend all those months, all those years enjoying that game only for it to go and die? What a waste of my time. What a stupid investment that was. Very few people get annoyed at themselves like that, and yet most people want to play an MMO that feels like an investment. In fact, many people, and I'm sure there are people in the chat that will resonate with this, many people actually don't enjoy the process of playing an MMO now, but they keep playing it because the sunk cost fallacy says to them, hey, if you don't keep playing this,
I found a minor solution to my problem. I can't believe it was like actually leaving the options menu open, but it was leaving the options menu open. Fixed it. I can't believe that.
The time you've already wasted. The moment you stop,
there we go,
is the moment it becomes a waste. But as long as you keep going, you're still investing. As long as you keep playing, you've not wasted it. Doesn't matter if you don't enjoy it. Doesn't matter if it's killing you. Doesn't matter if it's actively making your day worse. You got to keep doing it, because otherwise you got to justify to yourself why you've done it for so long. And you don't want to do that.
As an experiment, I played through multiple MMORPGs to check, could I reach the final level, the final boss, or the final dungeon, or experience all this game has, without talking to another real player? And unfortunately, the answer was yes. Looking for group tools removed the need for me to actually look for a group.
Why would you play an MMO solo? I've already made a video on this, but just have a think about this. You want to play an RPG. You want to play good RPG. On your own, solo, not interact with anyone. You play Baldur's Gate 1, 2, or 3. You can play The Witcher. You can play a multitude of good RPGs. You play Divinity, Original Sin 1 and 2. But if you do that, if you sit and play that game, you are very aware that your community, your social bubble, if you will, stops at the computer. Because there's no internet connection. Your movements in game, your combat, your collection, your achievements, your existence within that virtual world exists entirely between you and the screen. Nobody else knows about it. But there is a love, there is a beauty to being known to exist within a world that has other people, even if you want to play it alone. That's why people play MMORPGs solo. Instead of playing a
How is building obstructed? It's not.
RPG, they play a worse mechanical MMO because the community element has value to them. It's nice to be playing a game online and see someone run past in the distance doing their own thing. You know it's a real human being. You know it's a real person. Unless it's reset and they're collecting flags, in which case it's a bot. But you know that that person is also playing the game. They see you, you see them. There's that connection. As fleeting and as shallow as it is, there is that connection. There is that moment. And that has value. How many of you have sat down on
I think that oops.
all the bloody time? It makes me feel really sad. How many of you, you've sat at your PC, you've sat at your PlayStation, you've sat at your Xbox, whatever your gaming console of choice is, and you've loaded up something single player? For me, it's probably Roller Coaster Tycoon. Freaking love Roller Coaster Tycoon. It's probably Age of Empires. It's probably it's Deus Ex Human Revolution. It's Portal. It's a single player game. And after about half an hour to 45 minutes of playing it, you think,
It's not online. It's worthless.
am I enjoying the game? Oh yeah, on a level. I kind of like it. It's kind of fun. I like the mechanics. Graphics are good. Good memories of it. I know what to do. But I feel this is a waste of time. But then you log into an MMORPG, and physically, in your own words, all you're doing is sitting and staring at a screen. It's all any of us are doing. Why does that time spent within a virtual world have more value to you just because people can see?
Because it never
you
ends.
existing in it?
Your work is always there. It never really goes away. It's a long grind that never really ends.
I would love to sit there and play video games for fun the way that I used to. Except
I do.
can't seem to value them as much if I know it's only me in them. It has so much intrinsic value to me being in a world with other people. I very much need that community because then I know that my time isn't just fun, it's an investment. And I think, oh yeah, I might not be making much progress, but I'm making progress with other people. They can see me doing this. This has value to the future. It may not be enjoyable now, but it's got value to the future.
Dungeon guides remove the need for me to ask and learn about the dungeon.
Elder Scrolls Online is the frickin' worst for this. Elder Scrolls Online. Join any dungeon you've not played before. Hey guys, first time in the dungeon. What are the mechanics? Every single person. Read the wiki. Watch a video. Do something else. Very few people in the Elder Scrolls Online actually take the time to explain fricking anything to me. And I really want to like the game. I really do. I love everything about the Elder Scrolls Online. I love the lore, I love the world, I love the look of it, I love the general play. I love everything except playing it. It's really irritating to me. Like on paper, it is just perfect. And then I sit down to play it and I'm like, yes, I remember now why I don't play this very much. How many of you have wanted to actually take on a dungeon without any kind of guide, without any kind of experience of it? You sit down to play it without knowing what to expect. And you ask the community, hey, what do I expect here? And they immediately just brush you off. No one takes the time to explain. So, you have no choice but to go and read a guide. no choice but to go and read the wiki, no choice but to watch a video. And then when someone else says, hey, what's this dungeon about? You have a choice to say to them, okay, yeah, this is what you do, or you just say to them what was said to you, read the wiki. And it's a cycle that continues itself. It perpetuates itself. It's very, very irritating. I'm sure that other games are just as bad, but I think The Elder Scrolls Online is the one that I found it the worst in. It is very difficult to find a group of players who are willing to take the time to explain to a new player how to play in-game, because time taken to explain anything is inefficient.
And marketplaces or auction houses made it possible to buy and sell my wares without ever trading anything other than an NPC. In almost every example of a favorite MMORPG memory people sent me, people and the relationships they formed, be that friends, enemies, rivals, or in some rare cases, becoming real-life partners, were always present. People and players make MMORPGs what they truly are. And if you remove the multiplayer interaction aspect, you're often left with just a big world full of lonely people. So what do we...
We can all be sad together. It's okay. Big world full of lonely people. Would you prefer to be alone, or would you prefer to be alone together? It's a horrible thing. Misery loves company. Misery frickin' loves company. If you're playing an MMO and you are alone, would you prefer to be alone together? That's unfortunately what it is. Everyone's like,
Not
oh,
anymore,
there's
no.
millions of other people. Yeah, there
After
are.
the way the humans treated me,
No.
no.
Do you interact?
The answer's no.
Briefly as possible. I do my thing. They
Sorry.
do theirs. They kill some bosses, put some stuff on the auction house. I craft some things, sell it to them. We go our own ways. We're alone. Together.
Here's what I truly believe will happen until MMORPG designers change.
Remember, I was super confident 3 years ago. I had all the answers to everything. Now I understand how much I don't know. So whatever answer I'm about to give for how we fix MMOs...
What's up, number 2? How you doing?
I'm going to fix MMOs in the next 10 minutes of the video, which that's a very impressive thing to be able to do. It's been going on for years, but I'm very impressed I was able to do this 3 years ago. Let's see what I say. I do not
Playing some
remember.
New World and some
Players
Project
will demand
Gorgon.
convenience. They will demand things in the game become more obvious, easier to achieve.
Hope you're
and
having a good
more
morning.
The developers will supply these demands and
Doing pretty good. I slept pretty well. Woke up at like 1, and I've just been working since then.
Or other players, auction houses to sell your wares, no penalty for death, and personal loot for everyone. Players will enjoy the convenience for a short while before realizing that the magic, the spark of adventure that was gained through overcoming the adversity of the lack of convenience has gone.
Was that accurate? Have games added in a load of convenient stuff? I mean, I'm pretty sure that World of Warcraft now allows you to just buy whatever those tokens were that were on the shop that they can do that thing. Was that accurate? I predicted that would happen 3 years ago in this video, that everything would then be like that. And then people were like, oh, yeah, that's happened now. It's not 100%. I'm sure there are some examples of games that do or don't do this. But I think in general, convenience, especially for money, has definitely increased. That's without a doubt. Convenience for money has absolutely increased.
Then they'll leave and forever roam the world looking for another MMORPG to recapture the feeling of magic from the first, never realizing the feeling of magic wasn't ever coming from the game. It was the feeling you got for overcoming obstacles and achieving something in the face of adversity.
How many people have amazing memories of MMO as a kid, and you've been jumping around as like almost an MMO nomad for the last couple of months or couple of years, trying to recapture that? It's horrible. I know it sounds really cheesy, but the magic genuinely was the friends we made along the way. And that magic has switched now from in the game to out of the game, because the magic that happens now is this. Most people were never in a clan or a guild in any game that has over 2,000 players. Some of you may have been. Some of you may have been in clans that were massive. But most of you probably never had a 2,000-person clan or group or, thing. But you're all on Twitch right now. Is this the modern-day version of a guild, of a clan? We're not all playing the same games at the same time, but we have the community that connects us together. I've got so many examples that Discord has created groups within games. People have joined up in. There is a separate little chat in the Discord for every game you can think of. Final Fantasy XIV, Path of Exile, Guild Wars 1, Guild Wars 2, Terror, God Rest Its Soul. Some people have managed to form guilds and friends from the community that we have created on Twitch and on YouTube. It's different vibes to an in-game guild. It's different vibes to an in-game clan, without a doubt, but that level of community still exists. It's just almost stepped out of the game and into the internet as a whole.
I'm finally able to chat. This is Azo from PG. What's up? How you doing, Azo? Good to see you. Thank you for the help yesterday.
Rushing through it.
I'm loving Project Gorgon. Thank you.
Technically, almost everyone. How many people rushed New World? And then how many people got to the end of it and thought, I'm giving up now. I'm done. There's not enough content here. Have you ever been guilty? No, I have. Have you ever been guilty of downloading a new MMO and instead of taking your time, instead of exploring, instead of playing it efficiently, you're like, right, I'm going to rush this. I'm going to read a guide for the most efficient build.
Yeah, I'm going to stay there too. I love this game. I've been playing it today for like 4 hours. I just got to get this like mob. He's like 9 levels higher than me. I got to get it off. Got to get him off me here. And I'm going to switch over.
I'm going to wonder why I don't feel any connection to this game. I'm going to rush through this game because if I don't rush, I'm not going to keep up with the crowd. But the irony is, if I keep up with the crowd, I have to sacrifice something, and that something is emotional connection to the process. It sucks. Statistically, most of us download a game, rush through it, and when the community begins to drop, realize we didn't enjoy
Eggs!
the process.
A lot of
We
eggs.
enjoyed
Fuck
being
yes.
part of that rush of people.
Egg.
Something absolutely magical about
Egg.
being within a community, a crowd, a cult, if you will, of people that are rushing through something. There is no day more magical than day one on a fresh server. There is nothing more beautiful than everyone being low level, doing low level stuff, fighting low level bosses, and the first person to get a green or a blue item, the first person to get something uncommon, rare, mythic. People are like, yes, that's the feeling we've got back. We're back. Then a couple of weeks pass. Then everyone's got it. Then everyone's reading guides. Then everyone's just doing the bosses mechanically. And you go back to the opening towns and they're pretty dead. They're pretty empty. One person might join every now and again, but even though they're going through the same forests, killing the same enemies, getting the same drops, magic's gone. So you move on to the next game, or you wait until the next league happens, the next thing, the next rush of people, because it was never the game, it was the rush of people.
They'll avoid chatting to others because that's an experience waste. They won't join a guild because they want to play solo.
Sorry, when I said they'll avoid chatting to others because that's an experience waste, I very much just realised in my head that in-game experience is different to actual experiences within life. And
Nice,
it's got a bit
system
of
ruminant
not fully formulated
anatomy.
yet, but it's something like you're basically sacrificing the experience in pursuit of experience.
Then, after getting maybe halfway to the level cap, they'll quit, declaring the game boring, bad, pay to win, too hard, or too easy. They expect the game to give them the fun and the adventure and the magic. They will never stop and realise they used the game to find
4.5 minutes.
the first time. The cycle
Nice.
then continues.
Cartography 6, level 6 cartography. Forging XP, 5 more minutes. So, no more fruit.
It's almost an experience demand. You ever sat down in front of the TV, in front of the film, in front of a game, started playing it, and your mindset has always been, make me happy. And within about half an hour to an hour, you realise, it's not doing that.
Carpentry of Jara and fletching from Alejo. Okay, Jara's on the west side of Serbia. Keeping it. Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, I like carpentry. I like the wood in this game. It's good.
Or I can sit down, and I don't want this to be like a...
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, I've been wondering about arrows of like barbed arrows. I haven't been able to get barbed arrows, and I figured it might be a fletchery thing.
I just think that we're expecting almost enjoyment to be pumped directly into our veins, when instead what they were giving us was the ability to have fun with friends, and we need to bring something into that. It's not easy to make time for other people. It's not easy to always chat in a guild. It's not easy to find those few hours every week. But when you don't do it,
My God,
realize
one hit
it's worth it.
because he's 8 levels higher. It's so annoying.
It's without a doubt worth it. And yeah, I am absolutely extrapolating out here. But what I'm extrapolating to is people seem to think that if something is easy to do, then it is always the worthwhile. And if something is difficult, it is not worth doing. When often it's the difficult stuff, the stuff you have to put effort into, that really gives you the value back. It's not easy to lift the weights in the gym, but it's worth it to do it. It's not easy to follow a diet. It's not easy to wake up at the right time. It's not.
Yeah, I forgot to buy a saw when I was last there. Yeah, I'll buy a saw next time I'm there. Therese and Serbiel keep near the gardening area too. Okay.
I'm going to tell you how we fix this, and you're not going to like it. There are 3 steps we need to follow to bring back the true magic of MMORPGs. They are.
I'm about to fix MMOs. I fixed them 3 years ago. Clearly nobody listened to me.
Realize and understand that every single MMO
Half my bar.
sucks in a different way. Yes, every single one. MMORPGs all have redeeming features, but they also all have terrible aspects. Combat may be great in Neverwinter, but beyond that, the game has virtually nothing. EverQuest has a deep character stats menu, but good god, the gameplay is clunky. Guild Wars 2...
I'll get around him. I just wanted to say I can kill him, but I can't make any mistakes, and like, but there's no real reason to kill him. I'll kill him, however.
Every MMORPG sucks in its own small way. There is no greatest game. There is no MMO that will unite us all. So please, as a player, stop looking for it. Pick one you can stand and give it a fair try.
I mean, yeah, I still agree with that. I do tell people that every MMO sucks in their own way. But like, how many people... It's okay if you're guilty of this as well, but I mostly see it on forums. How many people are waiting for the perfect MMO? That one that everybody plays. The one that has everything you wanted.
Oh,
Think about it like this. Imagine you have 100 people in a group and you say to them, hey, what do you want in an MMO? And you take what every single person wants and you say, well, I can't put everything in because some of you have contradicting ideas, but I'm going to put in a kind of amalgamation of mostly what most of you want. That game would appeal to no one because no one person would actually get what they want. They would get a version of what they want that's been diluted with what somebody else wants and diluted with what somebody else wants and then slashed and changed with what somebody else wants. It's the homer, the car that home runs on the close to no one. It's that episode of The Simpsons where they're doing toy research and they say, so, what do you want? And every single kid wants everything in this toy and they realize they can't do it. One thing that I do respect Path of Exile for was, I said to Chris directly, Chris, you do realise that your incredibly overwhelming skill tree is driving people away. People open that skill tree and they go, no, too much, not for me, I'm gone. And he said, yeah, we do understand that. It's by design. I'm like, what do you mean? Can you explain? He's like, oh yeah, people that would get overwhelmed by that are not the kind of people that are going to enjoy our game. So instead, we leave it there as almost like a litmus test. And if people open that and go, oh my God, yes, this is amazing, then they're the exact kind of people that we want, and we can pretty much design a game toward them. If we take that away, or if we present it in a slightly kinder, gentler, easier way, then what's going to happen is the people, the players will get invested, and by the time they get to the end game, they will realize that the game is so complicated, they aren't actually into it. So we almost filter the players that want incredible complexity at the start, and we front load this idea that there's a lot you can do here. If you don't like lots, this ain't the game for you. And I thought, you know what? I respect that. I think that he would get more players if these skill trees...
Cartography XP, 37.
But he specifically doesn't want it to be beginner-friendly because he wants the players who want that kind of game. If you try and make a game that appeals to everyone... Elden Ring does not appeal to everyone. Farmville does not appeal to everyone. Most of Farmville, that was the first example that popped into my head. My brain is still stuck in 2010 Facebook. But imagine if you were to try and make a game that appealed to both Elden Ring players and Farmville players. By the time you make that game, neither of those demographics are going to play your game. So, when you make an MMORPG, choose the demographic you want, whether it's hardcore old players or, you know, fast zoomer new players with no attention span. That's fine. Make it for that audience and hyper-focus onto your audience.
2. Remove convenience.
Cartography
Quality
20.
of life upgrades are fine. I understand reducing 2 button clicks to 1 button click isn't going to break the community. But anything that decreases required gameplay time or removes the challenge of achieving a certain goal, be that selling an item or completing a dungeon, has got to go.
Oh, that's a big statement right there. I don't know if I agree with myself on that statement. Removing all convenience. Dangerous. Dangerous, because I would disagree with myself there. And I'll tell you why I disagree.
12 and
It is
butchering.
very easy to just continue with whatever you're doing anyway. It is very difficult to give players something and then take it away. If you were to give players the convenience of doing stuff and then remove that convenience, they'd hate it. If they never have the convenience in the first place, they wouldn't care. Most players don't. So the idea of removing convenience entirely is much more nuanced than I'm making it sound here. Because I did say that quality of life increases and upgrades are fine, but what's the line? Because that's blurred. Let's take RuneScape for an example, because it's on screen right now. In RuneScape 3, you have something called your tool belt. In the old school RuneScape, you never used to have a tool belt. And that means that you needed to carry your axe, your chisel, your secateurs, your spade on you in your actual inventory. But the tool belt means that those items now go onto the tool belt, which is its separate inventory, so it doesn't take up space in your main inventory. Is that quality of life, or is that convenience? Because at what point does quality of life become convenient? Is quality of life convenience? At what point do they cross over? I mean, a quality of life update would be you can swap worlds with a single click instead of needing to log out, log back in, change worlds, go from there. Because that's not necessarily mechanically changing the experience within the game. But any quality of life within the game, that's going to be a mechanical change. That's going to change your experience, and that's why this is subjective. So the sentence I just gave was, quality of life is fine, convenience is not. What I didn't realize 3 years ago was that they are, in fact, effectively the same thing on a sliding scale. And I don't know where that scale should start or should stop.
Auction houses shouldn't be removed entirely, but should either be in a hard-to-reach place, extremely dangerous, or place very heavy taxes onto all items being sold.
I I'd like to just point out that they did add a tax to the old school RuneScape Grand Exchange. People pushed back against it, and it has removed a hell of a lot of gold from the game and helped with inflation. So my idea of removing the convenience for the auction house by adding a tax onto it was actually done.
To vastly reduce your profit and give an incentive to go back to player trading. Looking for group tools shouldn't teleport you or your group directly to the dungeon entrance. Tutorials should give you the basics that you need to survive, and then leave enough mystery for you have to ask someone or research it yourself. You have to say, what is this thing and what does it do? But if anything removes adventure and replaces it with convenience, it has no place in an adventure game.
Far too broad a statement and not backed up enough by the evidence given in the video. It is also a subjective opinion, not an objective opinion. So I don't know if I agree with myself on that one there, and we definitely need to change that. Also, this was me being very, very blue sky thinking. This was me thinking about the idea that removing knowledge would be good when there's just no way you could do it. You can't stop people making wikis. You can't stop people making guides. The only way that you would effectively make a guide or a wiki less impactful is by changing the experience in the game. And I think Final Fantasy XIV do this, don't they? Because I went back and I redid the Gaius file relatively recently, and don't Final Fantasy XIV actually give bosses updated attacks, updated changes, updated abilities, different kind of AoE effects? I'm sure they do. And then you look into the idea of procedural generation of maps, you look into the idea of AI learning. If you shower a boss in fire damage, would that boss's fire
Oh my god, we traded.
Back at you as a fire, would they change their tactics? I think this is actually where AI is going to go to within game development, not necessarily.
Okay, so done with this part of it. Now I've got to go south that way. Yeah, way over there. That'll be a lot easier than where I'm at.
It gives it much more variation. The only way that you can make a guide irrelevant is making the information in the guide wrong, instead of trying to destroy the guide. Dax, you put a really interesting point in the chat. You said this means that new players can never experience what old players did. That's an interesting tangent to go on, because can they now? When World of Warcraft Classic came out, did brand new players who had never experienced Warcraft before, did they have the same experience as brand new players at the time? Because the Classic launch has to take into account the fact that wikis and guides exist. To bet that a lot of new players watched videos on what to do before jumping into the game. What's the best class? What's the best weapon? What's the most efficient way to play? How should I build this? How should I put my attacks? What's my rotation? So I actually don't think that any
Live mob
reboot of an MMO would be able to give the same experience, simply because those guides and that information exists already. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. We can't close Pandora's box on all of that information that exists. What we can do, in fact, ironically, the only way that we could make sure that new players have the same experience is changing around what the experience is. Because if you change the experience from what people are expecting, suddenly it is new, and those guides are wrong. They're irrelevant. And people who are playing the classic version suddenly think, oh my god, I don't know what to do, we now have to learn the game again. That's the irony. If you keep the game exactly as it was, no one will be able to experience it fresh for the first time, which I think is what people want to do. Whereas if you change the game from what it was to something different, everyone is experiencing it fresh for the same time. It's just not what people remember. This is one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of things. You keep it the same, the challenge isn't there because there are guides. You change it, it's not what people remember, but the challenge returns.
And finally, this one's on you. Number 3, talk to other people. You are not the only person who wishes for MMORPGs to regain the spark of magic they once had. I'm willing to bet the majority of players want that feeling back. But there's a horrible truth we have to face up to first. That magical feeling of adventure, camaraderie, and fellowship comes from forming bonds with other people. And doing that takes time, which is both effort.
Thank God I found a way through my problem. I've been trying to fix that problem for 2 years, and I finally found it. I finally found my way through it, and it's definitely gonna benefit my career.
Stop pushing toward a numerical or item-driven goal and actively build a connection, a friendship with someone else. In every MMORPG I play, I say hello when someone runs past me. Because of this,
Me
it
too.
will probably take me years to achieve the best gear, while others, it may take months, because
I'm sorry guys, but that one still is on you. That one's on all of us. We've got to do it. You're standing in a group of 100 people. The irony is that all 100 probably want the feeling of magic back, and yet all 100 don't want to talk to anyone else. It's this horrible irony. It's this clash of desires at the top. You want the connection that you used to have, but you don't want to act in the way that generates those connections. And there is no other... I mean, the problem with going outside is that there are other people. And other people suck. We know this. I've met them. Most of them are terrible. A few of them are all right. But if you're going to sit there complaining that you want games to have that connection again, you've got to be willing to connect. And if you aren't, you don't actually want a connection. You want to complain. You've got to be willing to talk. You've got to be willing to chat to people and get involved. And you've got to be willing to sacrifice your in-game experience to have a personal experience.
I'm willing to spend the time being inefficient and talking to people instead of grinding constantly. If you want the unique connection that only MMORPGs can provide, you've got to understand that that comes at the price of efficiency. Spending time talking to other players isn't convenient as far as experience.
It is, yes. Yeah, I'll link the video. It's called Why Modern MMOs. This is from about a month ago. Why Modern MMOs Suck, and I'll link it here. I didn't know he did these sweeping like 2-hour like solo soliloquies, but I really like this, and I'm gonna go looking for more of these. I kind of want to start it over, honestly, but I mean, I don't know. You know, it is pretty good, yeah.
But convenience, as we already know, kills adventure. If after those 3 points you're thinking, "Where's my proof? What exact proof do I have?"
he like actually full blown. Well, he's reacting to his own video, which is kind of trippy. So it's like a video from 4 years ago where he said MMOs suck, and then a video reacting to that video from 4 years ago, and him addressing the things that you know that had changed, and the things that he was wrong about, and the things that he was right about back then, the things that he was doing, which was like saying hello to people rather than power gaming and stuff like that. He still feels strongly about, and so do I.
It's the old MMORPG spark, the old magic, only achieved by lack of convenience and player interaction. Well, old school RuneScape, a build of the game from 2007 with player-voted updates, hit more than 100,000 active players recently, with millions of accounts made in total. WoW Classic is being hyped no end. An early game build, removing years of updates and conveniences, pulling in audience of over 100,000 Twitch viewers. EverQuest 1 from 1999. Early builds of the core game are alive and well, with hundreds of people still selling player to player in the market tunnel and thousands of active players. I personally have recently started playing on the Mangler Progression server.
That was a good server. Now, I think this argument that I'm making in the video is a little bit reductive because there is at least a level of quality that needs to be taken into account of the fact that some games were good and some games were bad and some games provided a better experience than others. Some games were easier to install. I know people who, if installing a game is difficult, won't bother playing it. How many people of you in the chat right now, how many of you have ever tried to install a game, ran into difficulty and thought, you know what, not worth it? If you make a game inconvenient to play, most people won't bother playing it. There is definitely proof that older games or games with less convenience fostered communities that end up being stronger. This, of course, goes back to the military example from earlier. When you go through a difficult time with someone that is supporting you, you create a very strong bond with that person. A bond that is difficult to break. It's difficult to make because you need to go through adversity together and succeed, which is the hard thing to do. But once you've done that, it's a much stronger bond. So, people in chat, would you agree that most people will be scared away from difficulty? But those who remain
I embrace
and
it.
go through difficult situations together
Yep.
will form a very strong bond that is hard to break. The way this relates to MMOs is difficult old games like EverQuest are still going, and the reason they've still got those players, some may say it's sunk cost fallacy. I would say it's potentially partly that, but it's also because those people, those players who've been playing for so long, have gone through so much adversity in the game together, both mechanical and boss-wise and installing it and community-wise, that the bonds they've created are strong enough to keep them around. When you take a brand new MMORPG that gives you everything you want immediately, you don't need to struggle to do anything, which means you don't need to struggle to create those bonds. You don't need to go through the adversity. And indeed, when most players are presented with adversity, they quit. They leave. And they never create that camaraderie, that bond that is born from overcoming a problem together. Old MMOs may not be better, but when they were all we had, your choice was overcome this problem or don't experience this genre. Now the choice is overcome this problem or quit, download another game and then keep playing that until you get to a problem. Then quit, download another game and keep playing that till you come to a problem. Quit, download another game. The cycle continues. I've even made a video called Too Many MMOs Ruins MMOs. I will react to that at some point. But in general, I do believe that older games, when they were rarer, forced players to create those bonds of friendship or bonds of rivalry. They forced them to connect through mutual suffering, and that's a very, very strong bond. It's difficult to form that when you can just leave whenever you want and find another game.
Such a good game.
With none of the 20 years worth of expansions, and it's alive and well. Private servers running the first or second builds and patches of many games still pull in thousands of pounds a month, providing players with that authentic, retro experience. There is a market there crying out for the magic to
I'm out of arrows.
To sum up, in the immortal words of
Oh no,
Rapture
I'm
from
sorry.
Starship Troopers,
That changed how it
something
worked, huh?
given has no value. Whichever MMORPG you choose will not give you adventure, or magic, or fellowships or friendships. It will simply provide you with the tools needed to go and take that.
It's not often you end a video with a quote from Starship Troopers, but I think it should happen more.
It's a good quote.
Something given has no
Robert E.
value,
Heinlein
with
for the
so
fucking
many ways
win.
available to you.
One of my favorite
And
authors of
the
all time.
general
Definitely.
throwaway attitude that is more prevalent in society than it was many years ago. When adversity is faced, one of the first choices is leave. And leaving.
There's always two ways
means that
out.
You never overcome the adversity. You never form the bonds that overcoming it rewards you with. And then you never get to bask in the feeling of having a strong bond to anything. I've met so many people that give up at the first sign of difficulty and then wonder why they feel, as individuals, empty. And that's a horrible thought. And it's an even worse realization that you have to say to someone at some point, look, you've got to deal with this bit that sucks, because if you don't, you won't understand the value of what enduring this gives you. And from a design point of view, someone will say to me, well, everything should be good. Everything should be good all the time. Everything should be super easy.
Everything is
forever.
awesome.
Yeah, but in the real world, when you look at that, you realize that people then don't
Everything
understand
is
the value
cool
of
when you're part of a
completing
team.
anything.
Everything
But
is
it's not
awesome.
black and white. Every single player says that, oh yeah, you've got to endure a realm reborn in Final Fantasy XIV to get to the good bit. Well, that's going to drive hundreds of players away. Thousands, potentially. I mean, maybe even tens of thousands with the game the size of Final Fantasy XIV. So that quote on screen, something given has no value. Here is a game, I will give you the best weapons, I will give you the best armor, I will give you the best abilities. You will not have to work for them. You will not have to fight for them. You will not have to take them. You will not have to defend them. You will not have to work for them. And because of this, you won't value them.
That old MMORPG you're fondly remembering from your youth, and we all have one. Those days gone by with friends, adventuring and exploring. They didn't happen because the game gave you everything. Quite the opposite. They happened because the game gave you nothing and you took everything. You earned your adventure. You put the effort in to meet up with players, explore unusual mechanics, make sense of this complex world, and find ways to overcome the inconvenience. That was your adventure. You have, with any game, the interface to speak.
Sunrise. Oh, look at that beautiful, beautiful sunrise.
What's over that mountain?
Yay, no more crickets.
Every single thing and ask other players.
Beautiful sunrise.
I like the fact that I said it didn't. You didn't have a good time.
I don't know what the name of the world is in Project Gorgon, but it is beautiful. Fucking beautiful. Better than Mortal 2. Better game than Mortal 2.
Gave the game everything. It would have been so much better in this video.
A lot more fun to play,
You gave it
for
your
one
time,
thing.
You gave it your love. You gave it your guild, your community, your clan, your passion. You gave it your attention. You gave it the best years of your life. And in return, it gave you a decent adventure. And now,
Oops.
a lot of people don't give the game what the game needs. Unfortunately, you do sometimes need to give a game a chance. I have a friend who started playing Baldur's Gate 1, 2, and 3, and they were like, oh yeah, I didn't get into it, it wasn't very good after the first hour. I'm like, okay, what'd you do? Oh, I just ran around, died a lot. Did you read your spells? No. You talk to NPCs? No. Did you do anything that would add energy from you to the game?
No.
All right, cool. I can see why this is not working for you then. That's absolutely fine. And if they didn't enjoy that, that's okay. But there is a back and forth. I think there is a back and forth between you and the game. There is an understanding that at some point you need to put energy in order to get something out. And most people want to be passive consumers. Maybe this is what it is. Maybe because we're all jaded MMO vets, because we've seen films and we've seen TV shows and we've read books, and because nothing is novel to us anymore, we now sit here and we want to be passive kind of consumers of fun instead of active participants in the process. Does anyone else feel that? Does anyone feel that you've got to a point now where you know you're not putting as much energy in? You know that you're not engaging as much because you've not got as much free time. You've not got as much energy. You don't need to engage because Wikipedia will tell you what to do. You don't need to read because a YouTube guide will tell you what to do. You don't need to talk because Group Finder will do it for you. You have no reason to engage with an MMO beyond a surface level connection, and then you wonder why you have a surface level connection, and then you wonder why you're not getting back what you had when you engaged more.
But simply, you as a player may not be forced to, but you do have the freedom to say, I'm going to do this the hard way.
Cool.
Because that's more rewarding.
The hell is
If
it?
we want MMORPGs to return to the glory they were once at, we need to remove the convenience that is holding the adventure back, and we need to put personal time and effort into connecting with people going on this adventure with us. If you're an MMORPG fan and want to game together, please come and join me on Twitch. I play a huge variety of MMORPGs, and I would love to meet all of you in-game, whatever game that may be.
I didn't watch this ahead of time, but the fact that I put that in there and we're still on the same Twitch account, on the same channel, still talking about MMOs, that's pretty magical.
I'm usually streaming 5 nights a week.
That's a lie.
I stream 7 nights a week. That's the truth. Good fight, brother. Yeah! Oh, don't aggro me. I just want to warp out. I just want to warp out. I want to warp out. I want to warp out, warp out. Oh, did you aggro? Yeah. God damn it. Get towards the cliff. I don't know. He's gonna come back. It's so annoying. At least I got that. Got an item off him too. I wonder if I can gank this guy again. Like, is he gonna come back? Let's just see if we hear anything for a few seconds. You know? Getting a second kill off him wouldn't be bad. Nice. Two strawberries. He was, what? A level higher, too. What's this then? Yeah, I need to go back to town, but I'm waiting until I'm full, because I mean, as you can see, I got a lot of stuff. But I don't want to do all this walking to just go back and forth and back and forth. So I'm gonna fill up before I go back, because I mean, or die, whichever, die, or it's like what I consider like YOLO, right? I'm gonna go back and do all the professional stuff that you walked me through, but I'm not losing. I mean, I'm pretty far west of the castle. Yeah, I'm not losing this progress. I view this game as like kind of like Rust or New World, where I feel like I want to make carve like long cutting, you know, long sways in one direction. Because my God, the map is big. Oh, is that the end of it though? Yeah, that is the end of it, huh? Oh well, that's okay. Doesn't seem like there's anything out here really. What happens if I go this way? Does it just, like, discourage me? Is it, like, invisible wall? Oh, yeah, there's nothing interesting beyond this point. Okay. It's a giant hand. Why is there a giant hand? It's a really big fucking hand. What is that? Oh. El Zahato. A named mantis? Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't know how bad your friends are, but let's find out. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Oh. Stupid stun. Oh well. Free ride home. Oh yeah. Okay, so let's dump all of that stuff, I guess. Okay, and let's switch back to New World. Safety is good. I learned something, and it was valuable. I do not mind. Gorgeous flowers distract from the travel to Rafflesia. So apparently I warp out now. Aw, come on, man. Okay, let's dump all these items. Let me store stuff. I want to buy another slot. Storage. Yes, and get to stacking. Yep. Please. Okay. And you, how much money do I have? Oh, fuck, I meant to do that spider web quest for like the 500 turn in. Yeah. Oh well, storage. Yeah, we'll start with the I love that sound. Storage and storage. I'll go Joey. Got some strawberries and some stuff. Yeah, cool. Get a little bit less. Yeah, can you shove that over a little bit? Thank you. And then the community chest, which is nice. And now I'm good to go for that. We will go next to, what is this? It's like L. If you want to continue with archery, you need to learn carpentry of Jara and fletching from Alehill. Okay. Jara. West side of Cerbule. Okay. Jara. Nothing there. Larsan, Thanor, cooking, Hulon, the Hoarder, Nelson Ballard, there's a painting, XP and lore. Marna, item workbench. What is an item workbench? Transmutation. Okay. Joey. Pennock. Oh, okay. In a bit where you haven't explored. Oh, okay. West of the keep. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, I was just stumbling around until I found it. Ooh, field mushrooms. Oh, gotta teleport back out of here. Oh, no, do I, no, I'm good to go. And we teleport out of here and go back to turn in and do the next step in the quest. Let's try. Okay. Alright. I didn't see it, Therese. Oh, she's in the keep? Okay. Very helpful, thank you.
Do MMORPGs need a story? And if they do, how should that story be constructed? When you sit down to play your favorite MMO,
To the left?
what kind
Okay.
of story experience are you hoping for? Are you playing through a barren, narrativeless land focused on making your own story with the players around you? Or are you halfway through a several thousand-hour emotional roller coaster filled with memorable NPCs and epic boss fights written by a specialist story team? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Ultimately, does an MMO need a narrative thread to interest you? Are you happy playing through just a world? Do you want local NPCs with local problems or a grand-scale existence-threatening crisis? Do you want to be a prophesized hero or just explore a land that you're irrelevant in until you make yourself relevant? And if an MMO does try and include a story, which structure would work best? Well, after playing a few MMOs, I've identified what I think are 5 major narrative structures found in several major MMOs, so let's break them down and discuss the pros and cons of each. I'll also put on screen a visual representation of the narrative construction in relation to the rest of the game as a whole to make it easier to understand, and then after, you can let me know which story structure you like playing through the most in the comments below. So welcome, I'm Josh Strive Hayes, and this is MMO Opinion, short dives into the mechanics and constructions of MMOs. Drop a like on the video or sub to the channel for more MMO stuff and ring the bell for all the future notifications. And as usual, a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon, Twitch and YouTube who keep the channel alive. More information on how you can support at the end. For now, let's begin. MMORPG is such a broad term that few agree.
Yeah, I was just looking around trying to memorize all of it. I've only been there a couple of times.
One of the few connecting design threads is most of them are going on some kind of pre-written adventure, the central story. In this video, I won't be looking at the contents of the stories themselves, but more the construction of how the player experiences the story. I think there are 5 dominant design choices which exist on a scale from the world is the focus to the story is the focus. So let's break them down
Thank
from
you.
least story focused to most, beginning with number 1, no story at all. These are games where the world exists, the players exist, and the players exist within the world, and that's pretty much it. There's no game-made narrative, no quests, no reason to do anything within the world beyond the personal desire to actually do it. Players here are extremely intrinsically motivated. They want to live in this world, and so they will. If we had to visualize these game worlds and story relations, it would look like this. A big world with no story inherently within, but the potential for it to be added anywhere. This design is commonly found in sandbox games like Mortal Online or EVE Online. The focus is always on the ways that players can interact with the world and other players, usually building things, destroying things, and struggling to survive. But the lack of a game-created narrative doesn't mean there's no narrative at all. It just means that any narrative that does exist is purely player-made. These are games where the players will tell you to make your own fun, and that usually means talking to other players, forming alliances, and then killing others. The story of these games is created entirely through the interaction of the community. The pros of this system are complete and genuine open-ended possibility. No one knows what will happen tomorrow because the story is unwritten. Betrayals, team-ups, last-minute daring rescues, they're all genuine. And this gives games a real edge of depth. When a player does something important in these games, the player themselves becomes an important part of the community and the history of the game. Forums will talk about them. Guilds will either love or hate them. An MMO with no inherent story has more potential to throw an unexpected twist at players because you can never predict what another player might do. And it's fun to know that as you are there, it is happening for real. If you're a main player in one of these games, meaning you either lead a guild or are in a big powerful clan, or you were there when the game began so the community know you, you truly feel the world is yours to shape. Now with enough players, these are the game worlds which give truly unique experiences, often making the news for the crazy things players do within them. But the downside is, these games can be more fun to read about than play, because most people are really bad at pacing stories, and player-created experiences are often ephemeral, meaning if you're not there to experience the moment they happen, you miss it forever. Spending your time building a castle and then defending it from siege sounds great, but if you build it, log off, and then log back into the castle already destroyed, that's not as great, for you anyway. The danger of live storytelling is missing it means you've missed it forever. And if the player-created narrative is being pushed forward by a few powerful guild leaders, the main players if you will, unless you are one of them, you aren't actually a main part of the story. You're effectively a background character for everyone else. These games also suffer the most if the player count falls, because without players, your world has nothing going on in it, so they'll often fall into death spirals. Players leave, so the story slows down, so players leave. Repeat until the story stops. And then when someone new joins, because there's no player-made story happening and it's hard to make your own fun without other people to have fun with, they leave. The second design is optional paced stories to engage with, but not the focus of the world. Let's take the open world nature of the sandbox, but then sprinkle in optional stories throughout. Not the focus of the gaming experience, but they are there. Some players will log in and just explore the world, doing combat, gathering, crafting, never worrying about any level of narrative. And the world is fleshed out enough that that is a totally viable playstyle. But for those wanting to grasp at the thread of story, preset adventures do exist. A visualization would look like this. The world is still open, and it's a game itself. It's still a complete experience, but you've got optional pockets of story to follow within it. This would be close to old school RuneScape or RuneScape 3. The appeal of these games is the world exists outside the story, but is still relevant to them. Neither needs the other, but they both enhance each other by both existing. And because the stories can exist independently of other stories, you can pace out the experience and keep it relevant to almost any player, no matter where they are in the world. You can have low, mid, and high-level quests effectively everywhere, because it's open to explore the world. It's not a linear path from beginning to end, both narratively and mechanically. A new player can enjoy low-level stories and quests for the story and the experience they'll gain, and a high-level player may not need the experience, but they can still enjoy the adventure. This design lets players who value freedom and choice ignore the stories that they don't like and just go and explore, while also providing the focused goal and guidance that story-focused players want. One of the biggest advantages here is the world is still enjoyable without engaging with the narrative. You'll have a nice mix of sandbox players and narrative players existing in the same world at the same time, essentially following different but parallel paths. The downside of this design is not all of the world will be open to those who ignore the story entirely, as certain areas, enemies, and items can be locked behind story progression or quest lines. And when a new quest comes out, it itself can be the finale of a several quest-long chain. This means story-focused quest players will always have a slight advantage over the more world gameplay-focused players, as they'll have more of the world open to them. Let's move on to the third design, where stories are the focus, but each story runs independently of and concurrently with others, and each has a defined ending. This is a lesser used style, but it essentially means the game world as a whole now exists to contain multiple narrative threads within it, and each thread has a start and a finish. They don't need to follow a greater narrative altogether, and they can be experienced in any real order. For story focus, this would be your Dungeons & Dragons Online. For horizontal leveling, you could make an argument for Guild Wars 2. A visualization would look like this. It is still a complete world, but now each part of the world exists purely as a container for a specific narrative thread, a local story in each place. The main difference between this style and the previous is, in the previous style, a player may venture into the open world without a story connection, simply because the world alone is enough to provide good gameplay. In this version, however, the game is focused on linking any exploration of the world with a narrative hook. You now need a reason to go into the world beyond just, I want to. At this level, you're still mostly dealing with local problems and the world is still open, but every part of the world exists to house a story moment. You can still pick and choose which story you want to follow based on what sounds interesting. This is often an extremely solo-friendly experience, which is enhanced with other people, but doesn't need them. Each area being self-contained means you can create a more focused, intense experience for each story moment and not worry about overwhelming the player by linking it to a greater narrative. The focus is always on the current adventure being able to stand alone, and the only real link to another adventure is the player themselves. One of the strongest advantages of this system is how the stories can stand independently and finish, giving them each satisfying conclusions, even though they may be short. This makes the world feel like a collection of short stories instead of one big epic storyline. The downside of this type of design is, by connecting locations to stories, you're pushing away the player who value a sense of the world itself And on the opposite side, you're not able to build the epic connected narratives of specific story-focused games. You're effectively losing the extreme open-ended nature of the sandbox and losing the extreme epic nature of a super long narrative to give lots of shorter, finished experiences. It's a very middle-of-the-road approach, which personally I really like, but this is where you're not getting the hardcore fans of either side. The fourth design is standalone stories focused on moving from story to story in a much more linear way. The visualization here
Okay,
looks
thank
like
you.
this. And a great example would be older Neverwinter. This design has the world exist as the container for a narrative, and the narrative is split up into more focused stories with a specific beginning
Butcher.
and end.
Okay, Butcher.
End
Thank
of
you.
one will
Okay,
naturally
I will.
flow
I've been
into the
butchering a
start
lot,
of
yeah.
another, either by level ranges that you'll finish a story at, or location you'll end up on the map. Or, and this is the most egregious example, a new expansion releases and makes the previous zones less relevant. To use Neverwinter as an example, when an expansion releases, it brings with it a new map location, new weapons, armor, loot, enemies, and dungeons, possibly even a level cap increase, and every player is encouraged to go there because the lowest and most basic items of that expansion are usually as good, if not better, than the top items in the previous. But narratively,
Thank you for all the wonderful information. It's good to have somebody else help me for once instead of me doing it for other people. It's good.
The pros of this system are every new expansion serves as an onboarding point for new players. You don't need to play through years of content or context to get to the good
I forgot
stuff,
about the
because each
power.
story is
Oops.
good stuff
Oh well.
itself. And because each story has a new area and is self-contained, you're never left behind from the top elite players. It's essentially a soft reset every new section, every new story, making it very appealing to more casual players. And having a focused story moment also centralizes the player base and makes the game feel active. Everyone is experiencing that story moment together, which makes finding groups for new content really easy because everyone's doing the new content. This keeps the newest part of the game very much alive. The cons of this system are the same soft reset which new players value can be very demotivating for hardcore elite players. Knowing that your mechanical progression through the previous story section will be irrelevant when the new section begins can make players question, why am I chasing power when I'm just going to be given more power if I wait? This is the kind of narrative and mechanical construction that values having new player onboarding points far more than having long-term meaningful progression. Games like this often see huge amounts of player churn, but they're always at least active on the latest bit. Stories in this design system are also effectively time-gated to experience at their peak, as they mostly exist to give mechanical gameplay. And returning to play older stories within these games will give you almost no mechanical advantage and not open up more of the world. So very few players will do that, which makes finding groups for older content much harder. In a way, you have a very limited time to experience any story moment as it's meant to be experienced before it falls into irrelevance and the player base just move on. And the fifth and final overall design style is the game has one main story which everything is pushing towards. Any updates or expansions will add on to or continue this story, but are not themselves onboarding points for new players. The world may have gameplay elements within it, but the focus is always on the main narrative, and you need to start at the start. This would be your Final Fantasy XIV up to Endwalker, and the core plot of most of the Elder Scrolls Online. A visualization might look something like this. Similar to the previous in its linear nature, the difference being where the previous one had stories self-contained and then moved on from, this one has one story constantly added to. This level of story focus places the inbuilt narrative front and center. The majority of the design decisions are now about getting the player to experience the story. Now, it's important to remember that there may be side distractions or small parts of the world within these games that a player can still enjoy without engaging with the narrative, like the Golden Saucer in Final Fantasy XIV, or just running around discovering crafting benches in the Elder Scrolls Online. But when a new player does want to get into the narrative, and the game will always push you to do that, they must begin at page 1 and journey all the way through. The advantage of this system is it allows the greatest scope for an absolutely epic tale to be told, with lots of locations, lots of NPCs, multi-year long narrative arcs, emotional peaks and troughs. Players can form long-term connections with NPCs and feel genuinely affected if they succeed or fail at their missions. For the players willing to invest in a long-term story, this design has the potential payoff because it can provide the most setup and potentially the most satisfying endings. Players can also feel safe investing time into the story because they know it won't suddenly become narratively or mechanically irrelevant when the next expansion pops up. So you end up with a very invested, very large player base all experiencing one story together. The downside, however, is new players can see this as extremely intimidating to get into. The well-known attitude of you have to play hundreds of hours of Final Fantasy XIV before it gets good puts a lot of players off, with many opting to buy level boosts and story skips, missing the years of context which make the later story so good. Another ironic downside of this is, despite the fact this design does have the potential to give the most satisfying ending, it also has the most risk if it does end. Writing a satisfying story from humble beginnings to epic conclusion is effort and time for both the writing crew and the players who need to get invested into it. It is a huge time sink to actually care about a landmass or a narrative or a collection of NPCs over a long period of time. And when that story finally concludes and ends, although it's satisfying, it is effort to get them invested into another story. You could just choose to never actually end that story and just add in more and more bad guys and more stakes, but if you do that, you run the risk of never ending the story and running into constant power creep, which becomes draining. This is what happened to World of Warcraft, because resetting the game to effectively zero and starting from humble beginnings again doesn't feel good for the long-term players. This is why Cataclysm was such a risk. Changing around the long-term story that people knew and expecting them to get invested into the start of something new was difficult. So while yes, long-term stories do have the greatest potential payoff, they also ironically have the greatest danger if you ever do reach that payoff. Games with lots of small stories can finish the story because the story itself is enjoyable and it's not too draining to get into, enjoy, and then move on from. If a story is multiple years long, ending it means you are going to lose players who are invested in it. This design means a player always has a suggested narrative to follow for both their level and in-game location, and will essentially always have the same adventure as everyone else in the same order. There's very few to no unique player-made adventures to be had in these narrative-focused games. So, 5 overarching narrative construction blueprints. No story at all, just an open world to play in and create a narrative if you want with other players, a world to play in with small narrative moments contained within it that are not the focus, a world centered around stories with each running independently and simultaneously, a world focused on stories running in a linear one after the other design with each being an onboarding point for that story and leaving the previous behind, and a massive overarching story told over many years and many updates. Now, some MMOs will contain multiple examples of the above 5 styles. RuneScape is an open world game, but it does also have long-running epic storylines. Final Fantasy XIV does have an epic storyline, but also the self-contained class and job quest lines. Many MMOs will try and mix in different narrative structures for different parts of their game, but most will have a rather obvious overall approach relating to one of the above 5. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the first or fifth style. Having no story to me feels a bit too open, and having a single focus story feels a bit too restricting. I like MMO games which sit within the middle 2, 3, or 4 choices. Worlds which can stand on their own merits that I can explore without being narratively engaged, and narratives that I can engage with to enhance the world that I'm in. I think this is why games like Old School RuneScape, Guild Wars 2, and The Elder Scrolls Online appeal to so many middle-of-the-road MMO players. There's enough variety within them when it comes to narrative structure that most players can find a playstyle they like and just do that. You're not appealing to the hardcore of either side. But what do you think? And which narrative structure do you enjoy playing through the most?
No story, all combat. No story, no all combat, all crafting.
In the comments below.
No story, all combat, all crafting.
Supporters on Patreon, Twitch, and YouTube who keep the channel alive. You can
Simple
support
6
for £9 a
words.
month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and our Discord. And as always, have a great day.
I went the wrong way. Going to. Ooh, a nice skinning knife. Yay. What's that doing there? Yay. Now I could gut fish. I suppose I have enough skinning knives. I don't really understand how to gut fish, but... Oh, equipment and combos. Okay, so that's kind of funny. Fish gut. I love this game. It's so good. It's just great. Just great game. It's Oh, my stuff ran out. Oh, I can't repeat it yet. Oh, I didn't know. Shit. I can't repeat that yet? Oh. Oh well. Once per month, oh wow. Cool, he had 1 health. Nice. Oh, at least the spawn's right here. Annoying.
You ever find yourself losing your wallet or your keys around the house, or worse, when you're out and about? If so, then this video's sponsor, Ridge, has got you covered. Their new range of AirTag accessories make their already excellent wallets and key cases even better. Click the link below to check them out right now and get 10% off your order with offer code SKILLUP. Stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, with this quote: when you are 6 hours into playing Battlefield and you run out of ammo in your clip and we ask you for $1 to reload, you're really not very price sensitive at that point, end quote. That was John Riccitiello speaking 12 years ago in his capacity as CEO of EA. That clip is legendary, the moment when EA's top man waxed lyrical about the idea of charging us for ammo in a Battlefield game. He wasn't proposing it per se, he was speaking abstractly about the moment where we might be most vulnerable to all of the in-game spending shit that EA was working hard to shovel into their entire portfolio of games. His leadership tenure was the true golden era of EA bullshit, with him pushing the monetization envelope so far that the company won the Worst Company in America award 2 years running. Until it eventually resigned his position as CEO owing to the company's poor financial performance, ironically enough. So where did he end up, you might ask? Well, wouldn't you know it, Riccitiello spent a bit of time in the wilderness before eventually suffering the fate of every failing CEO, getting another CEO job. He was appointed the CEO of Unity in 2014. What is Unity? It's a game engine. Game makers can use it to make video games for all platforms. It's very popular with the indie dev scene. Think games like Among Us, Call to the Lamb, Rust, and hundreds more household name indie titles. The engine is particularly popular on mobile platforms, with over 50% of the mobile games you might play being used in Unity. Not only a lot of the shovelware that is actually big hitters like Pokemon Go, Marvel Snap, and Genshin Impact. But Unity as a company isn't just a game engine, it's also the advertising platform and in-game spending tools that developers can use in their Unity-made games to handle monetization. So if I make a mobile game and I want ads to appear at certain points, or I want to sell players in-game items, then Unity can help with all of that and they take a piece of the action. The ads and in-game spending side of that equation accounts for roughly half of Unity's revenue. That's an important point to come back to. So, Unity has existed for a long time, and developers have historically really liked it. But in 2020, something important happened. Unity floated on the stock exchange, and we all know what that means. Everything's about to get way, way shittier. From this point on, developers became increasingly frustrated with the engine, many commenting that core features were being abandoned and general usability eroded, while the company focused more and more on its ad sales platform called Level Play. Still, Unity remains squarely focused on their ad business and in-game spending tools to drive bottom-line growth. So intense was their focus that anyone that didn't share their fervor was labeled a fucking idiot. Who would be crass enough to say such a thing? Why, it's old mate John Riccitiello. Speaking to Pocket Gamer, they asked about developers who don't prioritize monetization early in the development process. Patello responded, quote, "It's a very small portion of the gaming industry that works that way, and some of these people are my favorite people in the world to fight with. They're the most beautiful and pure, brilliant people. They're also some of the biggest fucking idiots," end quote. Cannot believe that the dude who wanted to sell bullets in a Battlefield game would belt out such a clanger. I'm truly shocked. He later apologized for those remarks, promising to do better, and I, for one, really believe it. I mean, if there's one group of people who you know you can trust, it's CEOs. So, I was shocked yet again when this week, Unity uploaded a blog post titled, "Changes to Unity Plans and Pricing." Now, there's a lot to unpack with these changes, so I'm going to keep it really simple. Basically, Unity want more money, and rather than provide new features or better service or anything that might induce more developers to use Unity, they just added a new fee of approximately 20 cents that would be incurred whenever someone installs a game made in Unity. There were some thresholds announced, meaning your game had to be installed X number of times and make X number of dollars. Bottom line, tens of thousands of developers would be affected by this new fee. This was not something targeting just a handful of games or studios. It was a broad-based change that would affect every successful studio or any studio hoping to one day become successful. So immediately, as soon as this was announced, the games development community went absolutely fucking apeshit. Because not only was this some bullshit, it was obvious that Unity had done zero consultation with the industry and had not thought through so many elements of this plan. For example, developers will often give away their games as part of charity bundles to raise money for certain causes. These bundles can be wildly popular with hundreds of thousands of people purchasing them. Under the initial reveal of this policy, developers rightly assumed that those given away games would also incur this fee, meaning that developers would have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in addition to giving away their games for free. Unity later clarified that charity bundles were exempt. Here's another one. You've heard of review bombing? Well, get ready for install bombing. If a developer does something you don't like, you just install and reinstall their game repeatedly, which would cost the developer 20 cents every time. That was possible under the initial reveal of this policy, and Unity even confirmed that in their conversation with Stephen Patillo of Axios. They later reversed this policy so that only the initial install would be counted. But how are they counted? Well, Unity are using the extremely reliable and transparent approach to quantitative data known as Trust Me Bro. They specify that they alone will have a view of how many installs have occurred. They offer no way for developers to verify this number, and they say that Unity will employ tools to root out results that may have come from pirated game installs without offering any insight as to how their tools will be able to detect such a thing. Worst of all, absolutely worst of all, this change is retroactive. So, if your game was made in Unity 10 years ago, and it's still meeting the install count and revenue thresholds, you are now on the hook for these new fees, and Unity will chase them for you. And if you don't pay, they will revoke your license, meaning your game has to be delisted. So obviously, all of this is deeply fucked. But of course, it gets worse. Video games that you and I might play are all on the hook for this, but you know what's excluded? Gambling applications. Unity are happy to squeeze indie developers hoping to make the next cave story, but they don't dare miss with Aristocrat because they don't want gambling providers to start exploring other engine options. Here's another thing, and this is important. There are reports from mobilegamer.biz that this new install fee can be totally waived if you move your game onto Unity's level play advertising platform. It really reframes how all of this is to be understood, since if Unity are willing to use this fee as a bargaining chip in their negotiation with developers to get them onto their recurring revenue ad platform, it's pretty clear why Unity went down this path. Regardless, the backlash to all of this has been universal condemnation from every corner of the video games industry. The team behind Cult of the Lamb threatened to delete their game from existence on January 1st.
Wow.
That was a joke, thankfully, but they've also posted something else to properly condemn this new fee. The developers of Rust put up a blog post titled "Unity Can Get Fucked," in which they excoriated the new fee and finished with the following quote, "Let's not make the same mistake again. Rust 2 definitely won't be a Unity game."
Thank God.
Crab, makers of the upcoming Another Crab
Save my business, because I'm not liking you, Rust. Not right now.
Subscription services like Game Pass.
Putting me through Unity was such a fucking unpleasant experience.
This quote, "I fucking hated you," quote. In a slot, makers of Among Us, one of the biggest indie games of all time, posted their response, saying they would port their game to a new engine if this change went through. Imagine how badly you would have had to have fucked something up for games that have already been released to threaten to port themselves to a new engine.
Hello. I love you.
Definitely include what engine you're using in game pitches. It's important information, end quote. That is the most most successful indie label working right now, basically implying that they won't greenlight any Unity-made games going forward. Metacritic, makers of the seminal indie classic Slay the Spire, also released a statement. They revealed that they've been working on a new game for 2.5 years now. And by the way, no one knew that. This is how Metacritic announced their new project, a JPEG statement condemning Unity. They said that even though they've worked for 2 and a bit years on this game, they will port it to a new engine if these changes go through. They finished with this, quote, "We have never made a public statement before. That's how badly you fucked up," end quote. It wasn't just developers who were pissed off, by the way. One Unity staff member by the name of Jono Forbes tweeted the following, quote, "As a Unity employee until this morning, I assure you we fought like hell against this, brought up all the points everyone has, were told answers were coming, and then the announcement went out without warning. Those of us who care are out. More resignations coming end of week," end quote. One Unity staffer may have taken things further than that. The day after Unity made their announcement, the company closed several of their US offices due to what they called a credible death threat. San Francisco police informed Polygon that the person who reported the threat said that the threat was made by an actual Unity employee working in an out-of-state office. The allegation is unconfirmed at this point. Unity did close their offices nonetheless. More recently, Unity has unsuccessfully tried to provide further clarification on this policy, walking back elements while standing by others. The flippancy of the flip-flopping has not helped their case, though, as the sudden reversal of major elements of this new policy shows just how much power Unity has in this equation, able to make or break the livelihoods of developers with a few keystrokes, without engendering any trust that Unity's leadership have the faintest clue what the fuck they are doing. And that is the main takeaway from all of this. Even as a boycott campaign begins, various developers begin talking about a class action lawsuit, and as Unity tweet out that they've listened and are currently rethinking their plans and potentially putting a cap on the amount that they could charge, etc., the main takeaway is that even if Unity totally walked back this announcement, the damage is done. There is no reason to think that Unity will do anything other than the worst possible thing that they can do. No reason to trust Unity's leadership team, no reason to trust that this platform will engage developers in good faith and consult them about massive changes, no reason that any future change couldn't also be retroactive, upending the entire business model on which a game was initially developed and brought to market. Scores of developers have simply sworn off Unity now, promising to utilize other engines rather than risk more of Unity's material bullshit. It's one of the most stunning examples of brand destruction as I can recall across the entire history of video games, and you genuinely have to wonder if they are going to get away with it. I really hope they don't. We'll find out, I guess. I will keep you posted on the story as it develops. Alright, that was a big block of bummer industry news, wasn't it? So, what say we change it up a little and talk about some actual video games? Just catch that Nintendo Direct? I did. It was pretty good. I mean, not amazing, but I enjoyed a lot of what was shown. Kicking things off was Mario vs. Donkey Kong. DK has stolen some baby Mario toys, and Mario needs to solve puzzles to get them back. It looks kind of simple but clever. It arrives on February 16th next year. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown got a release date during this showcase, January 18th next year. I know everyone shat on this one when it was first revealed. I played it and I'm here to tell you that it rules. It really does. Fantastic action, smooth controls, great level and encounter design. I'm all but certain that the discourse around this one is going to do a complete 180 when people eventually get their hands on it themselves. That'll be next year. Nintendo teased a Princess Peach game a little while ago. We got our first proper look at it here. Let's take a look.
Whoa, Peach transformed into Sword Fighter Peach. By transforming, she can use fantastic show-stopping abilities. Bandar the Sour Bunch with sensational swordplay.
So this is Princess Peach Showtime, and it's an adventure game that sees Peach take on various roles like pastry chef, kung fu warrior, swordmaster, and many more. It looks pretty good actually, and after so long seeing Peach play the role of supporting character, it's nice to see her step out into the spotlight. This one arrives on March 27th next year. Tomb Raider games are getting a remaster. No, not the Crystal Dynamics ones, those still hold up fine. We're talking about the OG Tomb Raider games from Core Design. You know, the ones with the triangle boobs, you know, the ones with the worst control scheme in the history of third-person games. The life of me, I could never understand the appeal of those games. But hey, if you were into them, then you can be again when the Trilogy Remaster is released on February 14th next year. Spend your Valentine's Day with Lara Croft. Great time for that. There's a new Detective Pikachu game hitting on September 6th. It looks cute. Atlas and Vanillaware are promising the return of the tactics-based video game. This one looks so badass and has the coolest title. Are you ready for it? This is it. Unicorn Overlord. With a name like that, I feel like this should have been published by Square Enix. They've caught at the market on naming their games badly with the whole triangle strategy and various day life era. Anyway, terrible name aside, this looks great and it's from an excellent team. Their last title, 13 Sentinels, being a Game of the Year contender for basically anyone who played it. I'm looking forward forward to this one. It's dropping March 8th next year. Luigi's Mansion 2 is getting an HD remaster. Love that. Luigi's Mansion rules. So anything that gets more people playing it, it's only a good thing. Biggest blue balls moment of the show was this one. Roll it, Stu.
First F-Zero game returns as a 99-player battle royale.
Remember how we're all hoping and praying for an F-Zero reboot, bringing the classic series into the current gen with amazing 3D visuals and a soundtrack that goes hard? Well, Nintendo have decided to do you one better. F-Zero, but make it battle royale. Look, to be honest, it actually looks kind of fun, so we can't complain too much. But I'd be lying if I said that this is what I was hoping Nintendo would do with the F-Zero franchise, and I suspect I'm not alone in that regard. Don't worry though, Nintendo basically made up for all of it with their next announcement, and it was this. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door is an all-time Nintendo classic, and a remake or remaster for it has been very, very high on people's wish lists since it became clear that Nintendo had every intention of re-releasing every good game they've previously made. Still, with Nintendo, you never know what you're going to get, so people were very, very pleasantly surprised to know that this not only exists, but it's a full top-to-bottom remake. I mean, just look how good this looks now. Holy shit. It was a big moment for YouTuber Arlo, who uploaded a video 4 years ago titled, "Let's Get Thousand Year Door Remastered." His reaction to the reveal was a lot.
Oh.
What?
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 when you want something so bad,
What are you talking about?
you swayed the world, dude. You swayed the world, dude. Every once in a while, we can get something that we want. You never get what you need sometimes.
The video is basically 5 more minutes of him making these sounds, and I think I speak for the entire internet when we say we really couldn't be any happier for him. That Nintendo Direct
Yep.
happened
Once in a
on
while,
Thursday.
if you try sometimes, you get what you need.
Just hours later, Sony hit the airwaves with their own state of play, and it opened with a reveal so impressive that Xbox may as well just throw in the towel, because this generation is over. Sony has won. Game, set, match, Team Blue. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you baby steps. So this is actually from 3 developers, Maxi Bock, Gabe Cizillo, the person behind the excellent 8 Out, as well as Bennett Foddy, the person behind the iconic Getting Over It. This one is clearly doing something similar, combining QWOP-like movement mechanics with that trademark Foddy sense of humor. This looks totally awesome. I know some people rolled their eyes at this, but 1000% into it. This looks amazing, and launches Northern Summer next year. There's a Ghostbusters VR game on the way for the PSVR 2 that launches on October 26th. That Resident Evil 4 Remake VR edition is also on the way at some point, but big surprise, the Separate Ways DLC is not only coming...
Hello, people. I love you.
Very, very, very soon. Tomorrow, in fact, the 21st of September, the DLC that completes the Resident Evil 4 story will release on all platforms. Ada is front and center this time, and as someone who never actually played the DLC back in the day, I'm extremely pumped for this one. Ghost Runner 2 was already scheduled to be hitting on October 26th, but the developer just announced that a demo is now available. Very nice. Helldivers 2. Yeah, so when this was first revealed, Sony said that it was headed to both PS5 and PC on day one. A rare move for them, given they like to leave a good gap between the initial console release and the follow-up PC port. Sony have said they plan to use this approach for their live service titles, so it's unclear if Helldivers 2 falls into that live service camp, or if it's more of a one-and-done deal like the first game. Either way, it's looking pretty cool. Teams of 4 playing in co-op to hunt alien monsters big and small. This one got a release date as well. Over in LA playing a bunch of things, including Spider-Man 2. I played it for about 2.5 hours. Absolutely loved it. If you're interested to learn more, I'll leave a link to my preview below the like
Yeah,
button.
listen to the FPS. It was good.
Like button already, right? Okay, good.
Right.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Moving right along. Tales
Thank you for the
of
extra
Rise.
content for my stream. I'd like to sub to your channel. Skill up.
Getting an expansion titled Beyond the Dawn. It promises to add over 20 hours of new content to a much-loved JRPG. That drops November 9th. Honkai Star Rail hits the PS5 on October 11th.
Cool.
It's meant to be pretty damn fantastic, actually. It's free to play, so it might be worth checking out, so long as you don't mind a bit of catch-up. Foam Stars is that one from Square Enix, which is basically, we have Splatoon at home. I actually played it, and I will admit it was fun. They definitely nailed the core aspects of the Splatoon formula. So if you want to be able to experience Splatoon on something other than the Switch, then I guess this is it. They announced an open beta commencing September 29th, so that'll be your best chance to check it out before the game's official release early next year. So, I'm not gonna lie, this was a pretty middling showcase, but luckily, Cloud and Sephiroth came in clutch with the goods.
Second, part 2, part 2,
Tell me you can't hear that.
part 2.
Planet burns
Yeah.
up, it and everything on it dies.
We can overcome our fate.
Am I the same as these monsters? Am I even human?
God damn, man, what a trailer. Square spent a good few years with their heads down on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and we were all wondering when we might see more. We got a peek at the Summer Games Fest earlier this year, but this trailer, man, my God, this trailer, holy shit.
Awesome.
Catchy, depending on how they're going to have to say it out loud. Cloud on a Segway, Chocobo racing, the Golden
That was
Saucer,
all
and
stuff.
so much more.
Why is there a
For me
Segway?
personally, it was just nice seeing how wacky all this shit was. I did enjoy Final Fantasy XVI's more
Oh
serious
my God,
tone. This trailer
Tifa.
reminded me that I really prefer my Final Fantasy to be weird and goofy. This looks incredible, and I'm so pumped for it. And the wait will soon be over because the game is now got a release date locked in February 29 next year, exclusive to PS5 for the first 3 months only. And after that, I guess we'll find out how effective Phil Spencer's Charm Offensive has been. Stepping back from dire industry tidings and showcases, there was some other news this week, like Titanfall 2 is back. That's not a troll, dear Titanfall fans, for I know how you have suffered, and I would dare not rub salt in your already grievous wounds. This is for real. Earlier this week, Respawn deployed a patch that fixed multiplayer matchmaking, which had been absolutely balked for literally years. The result was instantaneous. The game went from peak concurrent player counts of 1,000 to peak counts of 27,000. At the time of writing, the game was still picking up speed as more and more people learned that one of the finest shooters of all time is now playable yet again. Does this mean that Respawn have something cooking for Titanfall? Well, maybe. The recent patch notes for Apex Legends contained a cryptic clue that referenced the release date for Titanfall 1, 2, and Apex Legends, and Respawn are constantly talking about how they'd like to one day return to Titanfall, despite the fact that they cancelled Titanfall 3 a number of years ago. I wouldn't hold out too much hope, as the lessons of history are certainly against us. Never say never. Speaking of Respawn, you might recall that last week they put out a patch for Jedi Survivor that they claimed would substantially improve PC performance. I commented then that I hope they weren't lying, and it turns out they kind of were. To be fair, the patch does provide a modest performance uplift, but detailed testing by Digital Foundry still found myriad issues, concluding that Jedi Survivor is still in an unacceptable state and is still one of the worst AAA PC ports of the year. They also note that EA's
Oh,
patch notes do not
Redfall.
make mention of future patches, where before they did, hinting that this may well be the last major patch we'll see for Jedi Survivor, and that it'll stay in this shabby state in perpetuity. That would be a real shame. This game is fantastic, and there's a third one on the way most likely. Just fix it. Don't let poor PC performance be one of this game's most enduring legacies. By the way, if a third game does eventually materialize, it won't be led by the same guy who made the first two. Stig Asmussen did a fantastic job directing the first two games, delivering a franchise that reached some 20 million players with the first entry alone. Asmussen hasn't spoken about his exit, but EA did say, quote, "After careful thought and consideration, Stig Asmussen has decided to leave Respawn to pursue other adventures, and we wish him the best of luck," end quote. I'm very interested to see where he ends up. While we're on the topic of EA, one last bit of very sad news. Ascendant Studio, who recently released Immortals of Avium, announced that they would be cutting approximately 45% of their staff.
Love how
Studio
one
boss
turns
Brett
into
Robbins
three
posted
really
on Twitter saying,
fast.
quote, "Today we are heartbroken as we part ways with friends and colleagues at Ascendant Studios, about 45% of our team. This was a painfully difficult but necessary decision that was not made lightly. Nevertheless, we have to make this adjustment now that Immortals of Avium has shipped," end quote. Polygon claims to have spoken to members of the Ascendant team who said they were informed that poor sales were cited as the reason for the cuts. And yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Immortals of Avium was a big budget, AAA-ish game that peaked at 751 concurrent players on Steam and is generally averaging less than 100 players just a few weeks after launch. Reviews were also very tepid. 45% of their staff. Studio boss Brett Robbins posted the news on Twitter saying, quote, "Today we are heartbroken as we..."
So like, okay, so you follow the triple anus down that butthole hallway, and you make a horrible game, and you spend 5 years doing it, and you tank everybody's dreams, and you don't make any money, and you spend more money than you made, and everybody's angry, and so your response is to fire half your crew instead of just being good developers.
part ways with friends and colleagues at
I'm gonna go
Studios.
pee real quick, guys. I'll be right back.
This was a painfully difficult but necessary decision that was not made lightly. Nevertheless, we have to make this adjustment now that Immortals of Aveum has shipped, end quote. Polygon claims to have spoken to members of the Ascendant team who said they were informed that poor sales were cited as the reason for the cuts. And yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Immortals of Aveum was a big budget, AAA-ish game that peaked at 751 concurrent players on Steam and is generally averaging less than 100 players just a few weeks after launch. Reviews were also very tepid, and the overall response to the game has been one of indifference owing to not only that price tag, but also just how stacked this current release window is. I mean, this thing dropped while we were all still playing Baldur's Gate, and just a short time before Starfield arrived. Ain't nobody got time for that, evidently. Hopefully the affected staff are able to find jobs quickly. Sticking with that theme for a bit, Bethesda and Microsoft are meeting with employees recently let go when Volition Studios was shuttered by Embracer Group. The event is being hosted by a senior recruiter at Bethesda Softworks, and they've extended an open invitation for any and all affected staff. While all of that is going on, the nanny, aka Fran Drescher, aka the president of the Screen Actors Guild, is continuing to advocate for a strike authorization against video game companies. This isn't a strike per se, but rather a mechanism that would enable a strike if the guild feels it's needed. The guild is seeking better wages for workers involved in things such as voice acting and motion capture, and they're also seeking protections from the impacts of AI, which could have a ruinous impact on the livelihoods of voice actors in particular. So far, game makers have refused to budge in their negotiations on key issues, so the likelihood of the second ever gaming strike looms larger and larger every day. A quick lightning round to finish off. Xbox consoles got a nice sales bump out of Starfield. How much of a bump, you ask? Oh, just 76% in the UK alone for the week ending September 2nd. Wouldn't you know it? Big exclusives do sell consoles after all. Apple announced the new iPhone 15 this week, and its biggest feature is USB-C. For real, it's a very light year for Apple. Gaining less attention was Apple's big push into gaming, since iPhone 15 will be getting native ports of Death Stranding, Resident Evil 4 Remake, and Assassin's Creed Mirage. That's kind of interesting, since Apple has typically had little to no interest in the core gaming market. Watch this space, I guess. The Rock is not playing Kratos in the upcoming God of War TV adaptation. That's been confirmed by the show's director. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's a massive W. And finally, NBA 2K24 has eclipsed Overwatch 2 to become the lowest rated game in the history of Steam. Overwhelmingly negative, only 9% positive reviews. Reviews point to issues too numerous to count, but I probably don't need to recount them to you. You already know that publishers treat their sports customers with utter disdain, rehashing last-gen releases and shoving out broken releases, all while charging ridiculous amounts through egregious and predatory loot box-style microtransactions. Will it ever change? Absolutely not. The era of the good, wholesome sports game is long dead, and sadly, it will not be coming back. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, in addition to all that Nintendo stuff, we did get two announcements. The first was a release date for Broken Roads, the upcoming Australian-themed CRPG. This one has been on my radar since the moment it was first announced. I was meant to go hands-on with it a bunch of times, but schedules never lined up. Every preview I read through has been totally glowing, though, as the mix of incredible art direction, taut writing, and clever decision-based gameplay appears to be really working. This is definitely more Disco Elysium than Baldur's Gate though, but if you're into that sort of thing, then you should definitely have this one on your radar. It just got a release date announcement this week, November 14th for Xbox and PC. No word yet on PS5 or Switch availability, but you got to assume it'll happen at some point down the line. Only other announcement was for Hades 2, which was earlier revealed, but now has an early access release window. Q2 next year. What's interesting about this announcement is that Supergiant confirmed that the early access will be facilitated through both Epic and Steam, where before the game spent a long time as an Epic exclusive before eventually making its way to Game & Store. This is good. It can only mean good things for the overall popularity and uptake of the sequel, though it didn't really need much help. I mean, it's Hades 2. No one's going to be skipping Hades 2. So what came out last week? Well, Gunbrella arrived on the Switch and PC, and surprise, it's great. Very positive 90% on Steam, a strong 81 on OpenCritic. TechRaptor scored this one an 8, saying, quote, Gunbrella is a fast-paced, rewarding action platformer full of pulpy noir personality, minor balance issues, and tonal whiplash aside, it's worth your time, end quote. Dune Spice Wars hit 1.0 last week after being in early access for about a year. That unfortunately has not translated to a well-received 1.0 launch, mainly owing to the fact that promised features aren't there and the game still feels like it's in early access. The big thing missing is a single-player campaign, which was initially promised to ship when the game left early access, but is now just another roadmap item to be delivered at some point in the future. backlash on Steam has been swift. The title went from 80% very positive to 56% mixed since that 1.0 launch. Disappointing to see such a promising title cut corners this close to the finish line, and you have to wonder if...
Oh, I'm just not talking.
Hand. Seems like one that might...
I paused to have a snack, you know. Just watching this video, having a snack, take a small break, you know.
Fully deliver on its promises one day, but for now it seems like that early access label still applies. Ad Infinitum is that first-person horror game set in the trenches of World War I. Seems like it's pretty good, 82% on Steam and a fair 73 on OpenCritic. Got us a geek.
Check. It's weird because I see this and it's weird. I see volume, but I don't have it on Twitch. It's like I don't have it. Yeah, all right.